£1,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 8th of July. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
The new Chancellor delivers her first major speech. Rachel Reeves has vowed to boost Britain's economic growth, as well as house building. But what will that mean for Greenbelt land?
And a significant moment in Britain's migrant crisis. The first boat under Labour has arrived. How will the new government deal with this growing issue? Will be live in Dover.
And Nigel Farage is in Clacton today, celebrating his electoral success. The Reform UK leader will join us live as his party membership sees a large boost in numbers.
And as Emma Raducanu crashes out of Wimbledon, the row over her shock withdrawal from the mixed doubles rumbles on. Did she ruin Andy Murray's big day?
And of course, it's a huge news day. A new parliament, a new government, a new prime minister, and we're going to be hearing not just what's happening on the government side of things, but also how this new opposition is forming.
Yes, it's all going to be very interesting. You must have been delighted hearing Rachel Reeves talk so much about planning.
Oh, yeah, it is my favourite subject. But I don't know, I think there were a couple of really encouraging things. Immediately, this government has what's known as called in 2 big planning decisions that the last government rejected. They're now approving them. They're these data centres that were going to be built by roads. And the government said...
Love a data centre.
And the government said, oh, you can't have a data centre. You'll ruin the view of the M25.
Seriously?
So I think that was one
the
of
M25?
That was one of the reasons why these data centres were rejected. the new government has called them... I think this is a very good thing that the new government is doing. Now, we'll wait to see if everything they do is a very good thing, but I think you have to be able to praise things where they get something right.
Yes, what I don't understand, though, is that they say that local communities will still have a say and that they'll get rid of the inertia in the planning system. But how can you get rid of the inertia if you listen to local communities? Because isn't the local communities the inertia?
Yes, well, it depends what you mean by a say. You can have your say, we just won't listen to you.
We can ignore it. Well, I'm sure there's lots of disagreement. Let us know what you think. And also let us know what you think about the Tory leadership contest, which will begin very soon, I'm sure.
Yes, we're going to be speaking to Robert Jenrick, one of those first out of the block, but we're yet to hear from Kemi Badenoch or James Cleverly. Of course, Suella Braverman's been speaking as well. It seems like the putative contest is getting underway, but it might be a very, very long one. Lots of people saying that this should that the Tory party should take time, that they don't need to rush into anything. They've got probably a 5-year parliament ahead of them.
And we're going to be hearing from Nigel Farage very shortly indeed. gbnews.com/your say. Let's get the headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. It's just after 12 o'clock, and the top story at midday is that just days after the new Labour government came into power, the first Channel migrants have now reached UK waters. GB News can exclusively reveal a small boat carrying more than 60 illegal migrants was intercepted by Border Force officials and brought to Dover just over half an hour ago. These pictures that came to us just in the last few minutes showing that boat arriving into Dover. It's the first to successfully make the crossing since 85 migrants arrived in 2 dinghies on the 1st of July. And so far this year, more than 13,500 illegal migrants have now crossed from France. That's up 12% on the same time last year. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer insists that Wales has enormous untapped potential as he continues his UK tour to reset the relationship between the Westminster government and the devolved nations. The Prime Minister will meet First Minister Vaughan Gething in Cardiff later. His visit to the Welsh Parliament is part of a whistle-stop tour, also taking in Scotland and earlier Northern Ireland, where Sir Keir Starmer met with the First and Deputy First Ministers in Belfast. Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill says the new government is a chance to reset relations.
We've taken every opportunity to press home the need for a proper funding model for here in order for us to be able to reverse the damage that the Tories have inflicted on us for 14 years. So, look, time will tell in terms of their delivery and what they want to do to actually assist us.
The Chancellor has announced that there is no time to waste in boosting economic growth and that she's making it her national mission. In her first major speech, Rachel Reeves has promised today that major changes are needed to speed up infrastructure projects and to unlock private investment. She's also argued that 14 years of Conservative rule has cost £140 billion in lost growth.
I have repeatedly warned that whoever won the general election would inherit the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War. What I have seen in the past 72 hours has only confirmed that. Our economy has been held back by decisions deferred and decisions ducked. Political self-interest put ahead of the national interest. A government that put party first and country second.
Well, turning away from the election news to Ukraine, where a children's hospital in Kyiv has this morning been hit by a major airstrike as Russia has launched a barrage of missiles across the country. These are the live pictures of the scene where that children's hospital has been hit. You can see there a vast amount of smoke pouring out of that crash site where missiles have landed today. Rescue workers at that hospital continuing to search for survivors, with President Volodymyr Zelensky saying that there were people still trapped under the rubble. The attack is the biggest bombardment of the Ukrainian capital for several months now, and across the country it's reported that at least 20 people have been killed in other attacks and around 50 injured, according to the Interior Ministry. Sir Keir Starmer has vowed to rip up what he's called Boris Johnson's botched Brexit deal following Labour's landslide election win. The Prime Minister says that work has already begun to build closer ties with the EU. His new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has started talks with Europe, promising the UK will be, he says, a good neighbour. And he wants to reset relations to tackle challenges like support for Ukraine and climate change. However, Labour insists that the return of freedom of movement is not on the table. Conservative MPs will choose a new chairman of the influential 1922 committee later today or tomorrow, GB News understands. The committee will coordinate the Conservative leadership election following the resignation of Rishi Sunak. That's after the Tory defeat last week. Sir Graham Brady retired as the committee chairman following his decision to stand down as an MP. And so far, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown and Bob Blackman are expected to stand. Senior Tories, though, want Rishi Sunak to stay in charge until September or October to avoid an interim leader being required. And in France, voters are facing an uncertain future after parliamentary elections there, but there won't be a right-wing government. Marine Le Pen's National Rally came third, despite expectations that it would top the poll. Protesters, though, clashed with riot police in Paris last night after those results were announced, leading to a likely hung parliament. The left-wing New Popular Front coalition is predicted to win, with President Macron's centrist group coming in second place. Here, a group of bereaved parents has written an open letter to ministers urging the government to examine stillbirth rates and why they're higher for black and Asian babies. Data from 2021 suggests that black children are twice as likely to die at birth in England compared to those who are white. Campaigners say that it sends an unacceptable message to some women. NHS England, though, says it's investing £10 million over the next year to reduce inequalities. In the US, Boeing has agreed to pay £190 million in fines to authorities there to avoid a criminal trial over 2 crashes of its 737 MAX jetliners. The plane makers pleaded guilty to a fraud charge following the deaths of 346 passengers and crew in 2018 and 2019. Families of the victims have criticised the decision, though, saying that it allows Boeing to avoid responsibility. And also in the US, officials are warning people living on the Texan coast to expect power cuts and flooding with Storm Beryl on course to hit. Residents have been seen stocking up on fuel and essentials, with several coastal areas under evacuation orders. The hurricane's already left a deadly trail of destruction across the Caribbean, with at least 11 people now known to have died last week. And finally, as we heard at the top of the programme, in sport, British hopes in the singles at Wimbledon have now come to an end as week 2 of the tournament gets started this afternoon. One-time Grand Slam champion Emma Raducanu was the last Brit standing, but insists that she has no regrets after a difficult end to her campaign last night, seeing her defeated by qualifier Lulu Sun. It followed the 21-year-old's decision on Saturday to pull out of a mixed doubles match with Andy Murray, ending his All-England club career. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you at 12:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Right, 12:10 is the time. Good afternoon, Britain. Reform UK leader and newly elected MP for Clacton, Nigel Farage, is in his constituency today as he begins his role as their Member of Parliament.
His party received over 4 million votes in the general election, although returned just 5 members of Parliament. So let's cross right now to Clacton and speak with our GB News reporter, Charlie Peters, who is with Nigel Farage.
Well, I'm joined now by Nigel Farage on his first day of campaigning in his new constituency. Mr. Farage, what has been the key issues you've heard on the doorstep here in Clacton while campaigning?
Local issues, policing, crime. Why did the police not use stop and search? There was a stabbing, someone killed just a couple of weeks ago. Open use of drugs in the streets. I'm not even talking just cannabis. Crack pipes being smoked during the middle of the day. Why did the police not do more? Interestingly, antisocial behaviour has fallen because people are scared to go out at night. So issues around that really, really big. The other big one in the more deprived parts of the constituency, people saying things like, I want to work, but I can't. Because if I work more than 16 hours a week, I lose all my benefits. So that's another one. You get a sense, we're here on the edge of Jaywick, which is, one of the poorer communities in the country. And you get a sense that the benefit system is actually trapping these people rather than being a safety net. they don't feel they have the means to get out. So things like that, very, very big. On the national issues, it's all basically immigration and housing. A lack of social housing stock. But for young people, even out here where prices are cheaper than London, how do we ever get on the housing ladder? So issues around that.
Well, issues around that, of course, you term this as the immigration election. GB News revealed in the last hour that the first set of migrant boats have arrived under the new Labour government. Do you have confidence in this new Border Security Command?
Look, Border Security Command is just a name. Have a think about what's been done over the last 4 years. The Royal Navy are going to be in the Channel. The RAF will be patrolling the Channel. We've heard this again and again and again. I mean, do you not think that all of our intelligence services hadn't been working very hard on this for the last 4 years? Of course they have. None of this works unless you deport people who come illegally. Interestingly, the last Labour governments did deport a lot of people, tens of thousands a year in some years. Since then, the European Court of Human Rights has become more activist, more engaged, more involved in a broader area of our lives. I don't think, all the while we're involved with that, all the while we observe the principles of a 1951 convention that applies to the United Nations that is now hopelessly out of date and was designed for a post-war world, all the while that those international agreements sit above British law, I don't think we'll solve any of this. And there's some evidence that the trafficking gangs have been telling people over the last month, just wait until Labour win, and then you're guaranteed that to stay, you're guaranteed you won't go to Rwanda. So if we get some calm weather over the next few weeks, the numbers coming will be enormous.
And you've obviously been very critical of the Tory effort on maintaining the borders. I expect we'll hear more of the same dealing with Labour's approach. You've described your own party's arrival into Parliament as a sort of a bridgehead. Just the 5 MPs with 14% of the vote. Is that a disappointing feeling?
Breakthroughs are never disappointing. I mean, breakthroughs are always good. The first past the post system is absolutely brutal. We could have got over 4 million votes and no seats under this system. If we had PR, we'd be nearly 100 seats. I think the appetite for electoral change is going to come. Just think about this. For every one Reform MP, there are 800,000 votes behind them. For every Labour MP, fewer than 30,000. So you have first past the post can stop parties with big vote shares getting a small number of seats, but equally, it can give the Labour Party, with a third of the vote, 2/3 of the seats. So I think the argument for electoral reform is going to become very strong.
But the biggest proponent of that argument is the Liberal Democrats, with 72 MPs off around 12% of the vote. Have they been in touch with you since the general election last week to say that they'd like to campaign with you to push forward electoral reform?
No, they haven't, but I'm perfectly happy to work with them on it. It's been something they've campaigned for decades. Sadly, when Nick Clegg had the chance over a decade ago, we had a referendum on a system that wasn't proportional, was preferential, and couldn't be explained in a sentence. Quite how Nick Clegg sold the pass on this, I will never, ever know. There is a clear majority of the British public now think the system doesn't work. These results prove the system doesn't work, and actually the low turnout shows you that just so many people can't see the point of taking part in these elections.
Now, during the campaign, you said that the Tory brand was dead. But in the eyes of many commentators, they've actually exceeded expectations by avoiding that sort of existential wipeout. Are some of their MPs flirting with joining Reform now? Suella Braverman making some comments over the weekend. Would you let her into Reform?
Look, here's the point. They're already in civil war. The election result, the ink is barely dry on the paper. And they're at war. You have people like Suella Braverman, people like the father of the house, Sir Edward Lee, who say, oh, we must welcome Nigel into the Conservative Party. And then you have the other wing, which is David Cameron, William Hague, and a big majority of the 121 MPs who would want nothing to do with me, with Reform. I'm being used at the minute as part of the argument in the middle, but the truth is, it's a broad church, the Conservative Party, with no shared religion of any kind at all. They will go into I suspect, lengthy period of internecine warfare. They are not an effective political force. Can 5 MPs in the House of Commons make a difference? Well, in the Commons itself, we can make arguments, but it's in the country. It's in the country where I'm going to be campaigning, right up to the local elections next year and on to, Welsh Parliament elections, etc., in the years to come. And I think we have a major opportunity to build a mass movement, grassroots organisation, and that's where the opposition will come.
During your campaign, you faced several physical attacks, some in this town, in fact.
Yeah.
Now, on election night, we saw some Labour MPs facing intimidation from independent candidates. What did you make of that, and what have you thought about the discourse that's followed, with some people saying this is about toxic masculinity? Does that sound about right to you?
So a year ago on GB News, I started saying over and over that we're headed for sectarian voting in British politics. And as with everything I do, everyone says, what a load of nonsense. I had guests on the Farage show saying you're talking complete rubbish. Well, we saw a specimen of this in the local elections earlier this year. And yeah, we have 5 MPs elected to the House of Commons on a blatant anti-Israel ticket and all that implies. And Jess Phillips just about scraped back into her West Midlands seat. She was barracked pretty horribly at the count. And she goes on LBC and says, oh, no. It's just because they were men. I mean, even when it's staring you in the face, they can't recognise the truth of what they've created. Don't forget, Labour opened the door, the Conservatives accelerated it. I mean, 250,000 people came last year from the Indian subcontinent. Now look, the vast majority are going to be great people. The vast majority will integrate. The vast majority will prop up local cricket clubs. The vast majority, a lot of them will become doctors and do terribly well. But there will be a significant number of that 250,000 that not only don't integrate with our way of life and our culture, but actually seek to overturn it. And that's what's going on.
Nigel Farage, on your first day campaigning in your new seat, thank you for coming live on GB News.
Well, thank you, Charlie, for that enlightening interview there. Really interesting to see how Nigel Farage is thinking. Yes, he's an MP now, something he's tried to do 8 times to get elected to the House of Commons, but perhaps he won't actually be spending all that much time in the House of Commons.
Yes, I'd be interested to know if he's going to get himself a little abode in Clacton, because he's going to have to spend quite a lot of time there. He did start off by talking about all the local issues, the deprivation, the drug use, the lack of jobs, people dependent on benefits, etc., and then obviously moved on to the big picture of what he wants to do with these 5 MPs.
Yeah, particularly looking ahead to the local elections, then the Welsh Senedd elections. I mean, this seems to be the start, and I wonder, actually, we will, of course, see Nigel Farage on the green benches, probably making some pretty barnstorming speeches every now and again, but we might see more of him out and around the rest of the country trying to build this sort of Reform Party movement.
Yes, he called it a grassroots movement, didn't he? So that's his plan. Anyway, the race to replace Rishi Sunak as leader of the Conservative Party is set to commence soon. Growing speculation over who could take over.
Well, one of the names that is said to be considering standing is former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. Well, he recently sat down with GB News in an exclusive interview with our political editor, Christopher Hope.
With me now is Robert Jenrick, returned to Parliament as a Tory MP. Robert, welcome to GB News. Great to have you on.
Good to be back, Chris.
And great to front up, really, in the first few days after a Labour landslide. Do you want to apologise to our viewers on behalf of your party for 14 wasted years?
Well, I'm desperately sad about what happened and the fact that good Conservative colleagues, public servants, lost their jobs. But my greatest disappointment is that millions of Conservative voters walked away from us. And they did that not because we were too left-wing or right-wing, we had this slogan or that slogan. They did it because we failed to deliver for the British public on the fundamental things that we promised back in 2019.
Which are?
Well, we said we'd get Brexit done, and we did that, and that was a great achievement. And there were other things which I'll fiercely defend in our record. But we promised that we would have a strong economy and lower taxes. We promised we would have a strong NHS, and we promised we would have a secure border. And on each of those things, we didn't do what we said we were going to do. And understandably, the public have punished us for that. We ended up delivering lower economic growth and higher taxes than Conservative voters should expect. the quality of service in the NHS wasn't good enough. And instead of controlling and reducing migration, we created a legal migration system that was more liberal than the one we had in the EU, and net migration ran at $750,000 for the last 2 years.
Brexit gave that choice, didn't it?
Yeah, for the first time, for the first time in my lifetime, we have the power, we have the levers within our hands to control our borders and our legal migration system. But the decisions that were taken by the then ministers, unfortunately, created a system which was far too liberal, and that was an insult to the British public. That was like sticking two fingers up to those people who had voted for us, and in particular those people who had voted for Brexit during the referendum. We have to learn the lessons from that. It's only by understanding what we got right and what we got wrong that we can begin to restore trust and begin the long process of rebuilding the Conservative Party's reputation.
So trust is at the heart of it. You, of course, were Immigration Minister. Is some of this on you?
I think it's on all of us. You know, politics ultimately is a team game, and I'm not in the business of blaming this person or that. We all bear our share of responsibility. I did set out very clearly my views on immigration, and I resigned from the Cabinet because I had profound disagreements with the Prime Minister at the time on that. But that is essentially in the past now. I'm not, as I say, in the business of blaming people. I care about the future of the party. I joined this party age 16. I was there in 1997 in Wolverhampton, where there were not many Conservatives, trust me. I want to see it succeed. I believe it can do. But we can only begin to do that if we have a proper diagnosis of the problem and of what went wrong. That's why I'm on your programme, Chris. That's the conversation I'm trying to start now in the Conservative Party and in the country. If we can do that, and if we can ultimately be a more serious party, one which is willing to do the difficult things. You know, on immigration, we said we're going to do whatever it takes. We didn't do whatever it takes. You know, when I, along with colleagues, put forward amendments to the Rwanda bill, which would have made it the robust deterrent that it should have been, others refused to go that far. We can't be in that position ever again. The Conservative Party I want to build is one which keeps its promises to the public. If we can do that and have credibility and authenticity when we make these promises, then the public, our voters, will begin to come back to us.
You said others wouldn't go that far. The buck stops with Rishi Sunak. Do you blame him personally for this defeat?
I think Rishi is a good man who worked extremely hard and tried his best as Prime Minister. I think
that wouldn't go as far as you wanted on immigration, for example.
He wouldn't, and I think there is an important lesson for the party there, which is that you have to deliver on your promises. You should never take your voters for granted and just assume that people who have voted Conservative in the past will vote Conservative in the future. That has led to the rise of reform. It has given the space for reform to prosper. You know, 2/3 of the constituencies that we lost on Thursday, the margin of defeat was less than the reform vote. So my task is now, how do we bring those people home? I want all small C Conservatives, whether it's in the north of England and the Midlands where I represent, or frankly anywhere in this country, to feel that the Conservative Party is their natural home. That's what we've got to set out now in the weeks and the months ahead as we begin this process of rebuilding our party.
On to today, then. Labour's in charge. We're hearing from Rachel Reeves this morning. They're planning to bring in housing targets and rip up planning rules. You were Housing Secretary. Is that something you failed to do?
Well, when I was Housing Secretary, we managed to get housing starts up to their highest level since 1987, after the last Labour government, remember, left housing starts at their lowest peacetime level since the 1920s. Yep. So we should take no lessons from the Labour Party on housing and home ownership. Let's see what Rachel Reeves has to say on this. I don't think you can begin to fix the housing crisis unless you tackle the migration crisis. Because remember, you'd have to be building a new home in this country every 5 minutes, day and night, 365 days a year, merely to keep up with the number of people who are arriving.
That's legally arriving.
Legally arriving. That's not even the illegal migrants. And during the campaign, we learnt from Angela Rayner that she wants to build social houses purely for refugees and illegal migrants, rather than for British people and our children and grandchildren, which seems a very strange priority to me. What we as Conservatives stand for is home ownership, is helping the next generation onto the housing ladder. But we don't want to ruin our beautiful countryside. No. I believe you can do that by focusing those homes in the big urban areas of this country. Let's wait and see if that's the approach of
That's the tension, though, isn't it? People don't like new homes near them if they're not appropriate homes, do they? I mean, is it wrong to be a NIMBY nowadays?
No, I want to build more homes. You know, I want young people to have the dream of home ownership. That's a core, fundamental Conservative belief. But I think you can do that in the right way. That's why when I created housing targets, for example, we did a 30% uplift in the big cities, opposed by Labour last time. And it's why I worked with Roger Scruton to make sure that homes could be built beautifully in keeping with the history and the heritage and the vernacular of areas. Let's see if Labour keep that agenda going on.
On illegal migration, I mean, illegal migration is a matter of controlling who comes in. That's a matter that you can control legally as a government by dealing with the issue of visas. Illegal migration, Labour's answer, Rwanda is now dead and buried. They're going to build a new border command.
Look, I was not surprised, but very, very frustrated that the first act of this incoming Labour government was to scrap the only credible deterrent that we have, the Rwanda policy.
It was deterring a bit, wasn't it? We saw evidence in Ireland.
It was. We saw it in Ireland. We've seen it anecdotally through what journalists like yourself are hearing in the camps in northern France. Keir Starmer has essentially surrendered to the people smuggling gangs. He has said it's open season now to come to the UK. We have no deterrent. We have no way of removing you. Come here. And I confidently predict, and I don't do this with any pleasure, that this summer we'll see a huge number, a record number of small boat arrivals, and it will be because of the intervention, the first thing that this incoming Labour government has done, which is to scrap our deterrent. And the policy that they've announced is hopelessly naive. Instead of having a deterrent, they said they're going to create some new border command.
It might work, though.
It seems to be replicating what we already have. You know, Yvette Cooper said she's going to hire a leading military figure to run this. Well, we already have one. I hired General Capps, a war hero who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, who used to run Sandhurst, to do this job. Has he been fired by Yvette Cooper as her first act?
We'll find out.
You know, this is not a credible way to secure our borders, and I'm afraid this is a foretaste for what's to come.
OK. Well, what's to come might be you might be leader of this party maybe by October. Do you understand?
I honestly think this is just a few days since we've suffered this devastating defeat. Look, I'm sure there will come time for discussing things like that in the future, but I think that's a self-indulgent argument to have today. What I am interested in is ideas and principles, not individuals and personalities. And I think the task for the Conservative Party right now is twofold. One is to understand, again, what do we actually believe in? You know, of course we should be a broad church, but we have to have a creed. The Conservative Party has to understand its beliefs and have a coherent set of principles upon which to unite around. And secondly, we need to get back into the business of opposing this incoming Labour government. And that business begins today. That's why I'm here on your show. That's why I'm highlighting what they're doing on illegal migration and crime, incidentally, because Keir Starmer is also saying that he's going to release dangerous criminals onto our streets rather than keeping them in prison. There's a job to do for us now.
He's not saying that. He's saying not everyone should be in prison, not saying the dangerous ones shouldn't be in prison. He's saying that
so he'll release the ones that he considers are not dangerous. Well, there's a reason that they're in prison, Chris. That's because they are criminals. And he's just hired a prisons minister who is on the record saying that he wants to have very low...
Only a third should definitely be there. Just to very briefly, on what you think conservatism is, just the idea of it. What is it in your world? What is a Tory?
Well, as somebody who believes in secure borders, in our sovereignty, in low taxes, in the family, in strong defence, those are the sorts of principles we need to unite around. As I say, there's a long history of the Conservative Party being a big tent, but it's got to be a strong tent. It's got to be a broad church with a creed, something we can unite around. That's what I hope to play a part in.
And just very finally briefly, is the answer Boris Johnson? Is his time been and gone, Robert Jenrick?
I think Boris is one of our most brilliant Conservatives. I said during the campaign that he should come back, and he did, albeit at the very last minute. I would be very happy to see Boris back actively involved in the Conservative Party. Indeed, I'd be happy to see him in Parliament. This is a moment in which all of the strongest players need to be on the pitch. The Conservative Party's got to rally around, rebuild our party, and if Boris wants to be part of that, I'd be delighted.
And just finally, working with you want to get Reform supporters on side, does that mean you'll be working with Nigel Farage in Parliament?
Look, I respect Nigel. He and I share a number of things in common. We obviously both believe in strong borders, but no, I don't think that Nigel can or should be part of the Conservative Party. He said that he doesn't want to join the party. He said he wants to replace the Conservative Party. And as long as that is his view, there can't be a role for him in the party. But I will work with anyone who shares my determination to secure our borders and to hold an open borders Labour Party to account for everything they do.
Robert Jenrick, thank you for joining us today on GB News. Robert Jenrick with his summation of what happened last week.
Thank you, Chris. And my goodness me, could we have just been listening to the next leader of the opposition? Well, we'll be dissecting that question after your latest news headlines.
(12:32) and the top stories from the GB newsroom this afternoon. Just days after the new Labour government came into power, the first Channel migrants have reached UK waters. GB News can reveal a small boat carrying more than 60 illegal migrants was intercepted by Border Force officials and brought to Dover earlier this morning. The boat is the first to successfully make the crossing since 85 migrants arrived in 2 dinghies on the 1st of July. That means that so far this year, more than 13,500 migrants have crossed from France, up 12% on the same time last year. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper insists Labour's plan to fight the people smugglers is the key to stopping the boats.
We're setting up a major new approach to law enforcement against the criminal gangs who are undermining our border security and putting lives at risk. This will be a major new border security command that will bring together the work of the National Crime Agency, the work of the Border Force, the work that happens along the Channel, but also the way that these networks stretch right across Europe to go after the gangs that are profiting from this dangerous trade in people and undermining our borders.
The Chancellor is promising that the Labour government will create a task force to accelerate what she calls stalled housing sites. Rachel Reeves says she's going to get Britain building again by bringing back housing targets and lifting the ban on onshore wind farms in England. She's also promised to take difficult decisions that will help boost economic growth. And that follows her previous criticism of the planning system, calling it the greatest single obstacle to economic success. Meanwhile, the new Prime Minister spent the morning with Northern Ireland's political leaders as he continues his UK tour to, he says, reset the relationship between the Westminster government and the devolved nations. Next, the Prime Minister's heading to Cardiff to meet with First Minister Vaughan Gething there, as Keir Starmer insists that Wales has enormous untapped potential. A children's hospital in Kyiv has been hit by a major airstrike as Russia launched a barrage of missiles across Ukraine. That attack is the biggest bombardment of the Ukrainian capital now for several months, and across the country, at least 20 people have been killed so far in that attack, around 50 others injured, according to the Interior Ministry. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you at 1 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Today we'll bring some showers across northern parts, but further south it's going to be cloudier and there'll be some persistent rain pushing its way in. That's because there's an area of low pressure and associated fronts gradually making their way northwards. So a pretty cloudy day across many southern parts. Outbreaks of rain at times becoming more persistent later on. Like I said, across northern areas, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. And then in between, across some central northern parts of England and perhaps North Wales, some decent dry and at times sunny weather. And here we're going to get the highest temperatures, just about getting into the low 20s. But where it's cloudy and wet, it is going to feel pretty cool for the time of year. Some heavy persistent rain then going to push its way in initially across parts of the southwest as we go through this evening. Could cause some problems on the roads during the evening rush hour, and we're likely to see some high totals building up as well. Turning cloudier as we go into the night across central parts, but further north through this evening, some late sunshine to look forward to, but still a scattering of showers around. Some of them perhaps could be a little bit on the heavy side. Overnight, that rain in the southwest is going to spill its way across many parts of England and Wales, but it will be in the southwest where we see the highest totals. Could be 30 millimetres in just 6 hours, perhaps 60 to 70 millimetres in 24 hours over the high ground such as Dartmoor. So a wet story across the southern half of the UK as we head towards dawn tomorrow morning. Clearer skies though further north across parts of Scotland. We're likely to dip into single figures. Elsewhere a mild start but a wet start for many parts of England and Wales. That rain then continues to gradually make its way northward, so it will push into southern parts of Scotland and eastern parts of Northern Ireland as we go through tomorrow, clinging on to some dry, sunny weather towards the far northwest of the UK. And further south, it's going to turn a little bit drier, but still some outbreaks of rain, quite a bit of cloud, and still a relatively cool feel for the time of year. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
In West Yorkshire, the northbound side of the M1 has the lane closure and heavy traffic to emergency repairs from 39 for Wakefield through to junction 40. Northbound on the M1, the exit slip road has cleared at junction 14 for Milton Keynes following an earlier broken down van. It's also reopened for the northbound side of the M11 on the exit slip road through to Duxford at junction 10. Southbound on the M23 in Surrey, all lanes have now reopened and an earlier broken down vehicle has removed from junction 8 through to Gatwick Airport at junction 9, and it's all cleared for the clockwise side of the M25, and again an earlier broken down vehicle saw lane closures. That's just cleared. All lanes have reopened from Leatherhead at junction 9 through to the Wisley interchange. So that's your very latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:38 in the afternoon, and just before the break, we were listening to the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, and it looks as though, although he's dodged the question, it looks more than likely that he probably will throw his hat in the ring when it comes to the Tory leadership contest.
Yes, it certainly does, and I think a lot of people are expecting this to be quite a long leadership contest. No one wants the Conservative Party to sort of not have that thorough discussion about what went wrong. There needs to be a thorough campaign, really, and hearing different perspectives. So I think no one is going to be saying, I'm standing this week. They're probably even not going to say next week.
It's too soon, isn't it, really? I mean, any sensible person would probably, you know, leave a bit of time. Suella Braverman said the same with Camilla Tominey on Sunday, saying that for now, we need to reflect on why we lost. And Robert Jenrick said we lost because we broke several key promises, not least on immigration, not least on the economy and the NHS. So there you go, a little bit of time for thinking.
No, really, really interesting, actually, particularly his answer about Nigel Farage, saying, well, as long as Nigel Farage says that he wants to destroy the Conservative Party, we don't want him in the Conservative Party, which I think, obviously, Robert Jenrick is someone who comes from the Conservative right, but he clearly is trying to make a message that sort of can keep together the broad church that the Conservative Party is. And I think perhaps the most interesting line from that is that, of course, the Conservative Party is a broad church, but it has to be a broad church with a creed. So it can't just be a broad church that anyone comes in believing anything. Yes, it can be a broad church, but surely there has to be something that everyone can agree on.
Wasn't that what Nigel Farage said? Although he used the word religion. It's a broad church without a religion.
Yes.
So he's essentially said that in slightly different words. So there you go. There you go. Things get in your mind, I'm sure. But yes, what's the point of having a broad church if it's a different religion? Yes. Doesn't really make sense. Lots of you have been getting in touch. Margaret says Robert could not save the day on his own, but as party leader, he might. Bertie says Jenrick conveniently forgetting the 87 seats where Reform was in second place. Jenrick still talking of a broad church party. Let the Tory party infight and do nothing. Have they learnt nothing? There's a dose of scepticism, I'd say. Paula says she likes Robert Jenrick and he feels he was let down by the party as much as a lot of us were. So there you go.
Well, we'll be hoping to speak to all of the potential candidates as the days and weeks go on, and so we can compare what they have to say and whether they can convince any of you. But Speaking of the former migration minister, migration certainly has not stopped. GB News can exclusively reveal that just days after the new Labour government came into power, the first Channel migrants have now reached UK waters.
Yes, so a small boat carrying 64 illegal migrants has now arrived in Dover Harbour, the first small boat migrants to cross the English Channel under the new government.
Well, joining us from Dover is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. And Mark, it seems like the government has changed, but the crossings haven't.
No, and it's important, of course, now that we have a new government. It's a milestone that we are at the point where the first Channel migrants have crossed into UK waters under this Labour government. And also the time interesting today as well, because it's the day that the government formally announced the setting up of the new Border Security Command. That new command that is tasked with going after and smashing the people smugglers on the other side of the English Channel. Well, it's likely, of course, to be some time before that command is fully operational in terms of the direction that the new government wants it to go in. And all the while, of course, as the weather conditions improve, then more boats will come across. The Tory government, we know, in the dying days of the Conservative government, latched on to one newspaper report suggesting that they were all lining up in France waiting for a Keir Starmer government to cross the English Channel. In truth, it was all about the weather. We've had more than a week now of pretty poor conditions in the Channel that have meant that there has been no small boat crossings since the 1st of July. Overnight, we got an improvement in the weather conditions. The waves in the middle of the Channel died down, and that meant it was now passable for these small boats. So that, of course, signalled the people smugglers to start launching them. And we've had one launch so far. We've got a window in terms of tide and weather conditions up until about 7 o'clock this evening, when more boats could come across. But so far, that one boat had arrived in UK waters at 10:30 this morning and then was intercepted, picked up, and the migrants transferred to that Border Force vessel Hurricane that came into Dover Harbour at 11:30 with those 64 people on board who had made this illegal crossing.
And Mark, what to make of this UK Border Security Command that they're planning to set up? I'm reading here that it will involve hundreds of police officers deployed across Europe to try to tackle these people smugglers. Is this not already happening? Is this new?
Well, to an extent, yes, absolutely, it's been happening, where you've got the law enforcement arm, the National Crime Agency, involved in joint investigations with their colleagues across Europe and further afield. And we've had Border Force personnel actually stationed out in France in an advisory role. The French wouldn't accept law enforcement actually acting with powers out there, but the same will be true of this new Border Security Agency, unless it can come to some kind of agreement with their European partners to have a more robust police presence. But I think what they will actually end up doing is they will be there in an advisory role, in an investigatory capacity, perhaps, if it's National Crime Agency officers. And according to Labour, they will have more money, because what they're doing is the Rwanda scheme, that plan to send asylum seekers off to this safe third country, is now, according to Keir Starmer over the weekend, dead and buried. So hundreds or millions at least of extra pounds are being funnelled in to this new Border Security Command. So it will have more resources, we're told. It will have more personnel. Let's see what kind of a difference it makes. I really kind of align it to the war on drugs. They can have some successes, as they have done over the years, regularly do, against big shipments of drugs that come in, but it is a never-ending battle. It's too lucrative a trade for the criminal gangs. So while you can take one criminal gang out or bust a shipment of drugs, others will replace them. And it's the same, I'm afraid, with the international people smuggling trade, which is also worth many billions of pounds right across the world.
It's a bleak picture you paint, Mark, but we will, of course, be back at Dover as soon as we see more of these crossings, and it does not look like they are slowing down.
No, but still to come. Excitement is, of course, building ahead of England's semi-final clash with Holland on Wednesday. We're going to hear from some England fans who are already there in Dortmund, waiting for the big day. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So the royal family is opening the doors of Balmoral Castle to the public and giving guided tours today for the first time in more than 170 years.
And one man who spent plenty of time there is former royal butler Grant Harold, who joins us now. Grant, we know the Queen loved Balmoral, and that's, of course, where she was in her final days. Why was it so special?
I think for many reasons, but most importantly, it was a family home, and it's where she spent a lot of time with her family. I mean, we all know the Queen, obviously monarchy was the first thing, but she always said that family was right behind that. And so time with family was important, whether it be at Sandringham or Balmoral, which were both properties that she privately owned. So they're private homes and very special.
Which kind of makes it even more surprising that King Charles has decided to open the doors to the public.
I was surprised when it was announced, because for many years, I've always said that Balmoral's one of the most private homes. You know, they've always been quite fierce about keeping a private home, private estate. You can visit the gardens at certain times of the year. You can see the ballroom as well. But to actually go in the rooms is really a big step for them. And I think it just shows you that the kind of future of the monarchy with properties is opening the doors and letting the public in to see them.
Yeah. Now, you had a very special occasion in that ballroom, because you saw a film in there, but I'm actually interested by who you danced with in that ballroom.
In the film that I watched, the documentary, it was the Queen dancing, and I remember thinking I would love to dance with the Queen. And about 12 years later, I was in that ballroom and got to dance with her in that room. So
that's fabulous.
Was
she in her full tartan regalia?
She was in a beautiful dress. She had a blue dress on, which similar to what she wore in the documentary that I saw. And they actually replicated the scene in The Crown. Right. I was very disappointed to see that Brad Pitt wasn't playing my sadly.
How unfair.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 1. Now, a lot of association football fans might not have expected this.
But after some dismal displays in the group stages, England are through to the semi-finals of the Euros. Of course they are. Showdown on Wednesday with the Netherlands is Gareth Southgate's next challenge, and challenge for the team as a whole.
The excitement is, of course, building. And joining the fans in Germany ahead of that game is perhaps the biggest fan on the planet. Jack Carson joins us now live in Dortmund. And Jack, how are people gearing up for the big day?
Well, this is the quiet before the storm currently in Dortmund. There's been a few England fans milling around that have been arriving into the city on their flights early this morning, but from later this evening, well into tomorrow, when those fans really get here, this whole city is going to turn into a sea of white England shirts and the orange shirts of Denmark. Tens of thousands, 75,000 apparently, Dutch fans are going to be arriving in Dortmund over the next next couple of days, because they're only about an hour away from the border here, whereas of course the England fans have got to travel all the way from the likes of Heathrow and beyond. So those England fans are getting in over the next 24 hours or so. Of course, we were in Dusseldorf over the weekend for that quarter-final. Tens of thousands of England fans were in that city. Again, a lot of them were making their way on the train that we were on to Dortmund as well here today. So they're all around here somewhere. We're expecting in the main square in Dortmund, thousands of them to be gathering up, singing, of course, getting ready for that semi-final, drumming up a bit of excitement, because, of course, the excitement has not come on the pitch, really, as it's come off it with all of the England fans and the chanting. But how was one England fan we spoke to? He's called Todd. He's an England fan that's already here, enjoying a beer here in Dortmund. How is he feeling ahead of the semi-final? Take a listen to what he told us.
About time that the boys finally clicked for him, rather than playing so negatively. Everyone blames the manager, but it's a bit to do with them as well, you know. They need to step up. It's a big occasion. And yeah, it's going to be the one. We're finally going to get fire in. Expect goals.
So there we go. Todd thinks we're going to absolutely smash it. 5-0 was his prediction to me. So I'm not sure with how we've been playing at the moment how realistic that is. But Gareth Southgate said that it was the best performance for England so far in the quarter-final because of how the resilience that they were showing. Maybe, just maybe, with the passion that we saw from Gareth Southgate and the players after winning that penalty shootout, maybe that has been the moment that we just click, and hopefully in that semi-final we'll go all the
Hopefully,
way
I was
to
looking
Berlin.
through my fingers. I couldn't watch. I can't bear penalty shootouts. I was so worried it was going to go to sudden death. But Jack, have our fans been well behaved? Have they been behaving themselves over there?
Definitely, there was I think only 1 or 2 arrests that were made in Dusseldorf for the quarter-final, but on the vast whole of it, actually, very well-behaved fans. Considering so many people were worried that coming to Germany, you know, one of the beer countries of the world, that England fans were going to be reckless and you know, bring this bad reputation that they've got. But so many fans have been so well-behaved, and you know, we were in and around the fans watching the quarter-final in Dusseldorf in the town centre, and we didn't see any trouble at all from between the England fans and the German police. So yeah, so far, England fans doing themselves proud.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, Jack Carson, of course, we'll be back with you throughout the week as we gear up to what, let's hope, is going to be a very, very successful Euros. I have to say, when I've been on
Only 1 or 2 arrests.
Nights out in the past. Tom, how did it go? Oh, yeah, it's very quiet. Just 1 or 2 arrests. Nothing major.
You were watching it down the pub, weren't you?
I was. And, you know, it kept raining. It was bonkers. The most bonkers weather that I've experienced in July.
All 4 seasons.
In the UK. You had torrential rain and then glorious sunshine, and then it was bonkers. I didn't know at one point if it was raining down on me or if people were just like, sloshing their pints of beer. But there we go.
Yes, I saw pictures of young women covering their heads with their jacket to avoid having beer pouring all over them. But you know, it's a moment that we don't often get to see.
Yeah, no.
England winning a penalty shootout, so there you go.
And
good stuff.
And perhaps, as Jack was saying, this is actually the start of something that is beginning to work, a team that is beginning to click. Am I too hopeful? Am I living in hope?
It's a hope that kills you, but I'm always hopeful, always optimism. Hopeless optimism. Anyway, so much more to come. We're looking at Rachel Reeves' first speech as Chancellor. She's promising mandatory housing targets as part of her party's manifesto. What do you make to that? Let us know your thoughts. This is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. It is going to turn pretty wet for many of us as we go through the rest of today, overnight and into tomorrow, because there is a system that is pushing its way northwards, and this is going to bring a lot of cloud and some heavy persistent rain, especially across parts of the southwest as we go through this evening and overnight, with a warning out because we are likely to see some disruption. Some flooding's possible, as well as some difficult driving conditions too. That rain will spread across much of England and Wales as we go through the night, so a wet picture for many of us. It does mean temperatures are generally going to hold up, so a mild start to the day for many. Though further north across parts of Scotland in particular, here there will be clear skies overnight, so it could be a bit fresh first thing. However, once the sun comes up, we will see our temperatures lifting a little bit, although they are likely to stay a bit below average for the time of year generally. But a mostly fine picture through the morning across much of Scotland. Rain starting to push its way in across parts of Northern Ireland and spreading across much of the northern half of England and Wales too. Further south, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared through by around 8-9 o'clock in the morning, but it is going to stay pretty cloudy for many, and there will be further outbreaks of rain, these continuing as we go through the day, and there could still be some heavy ones. The more persistent rain though will be spilling its way across parts of northern England into Northern Ireland and into southern Scotland, across the far northwest of Scotland, clinging on to some drier weather for a time. Like I said though, temperatures a little disappointing for the time of year. We may just about scrape into the low 20s where we get any drier or possibly brighter breaks. That rain in the north continues to edge a bit further northwards, the far northwest of Scotland, clinging on to some fine weather through the evening. Elsewhere, quite a bit of cloud, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around. Some very wet weather to come across northern parts on Wednesday. Otherwise, there is a drying trend as we go through this week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 8th of July. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Now, the new Chancellor has delivered her first speech. Rachel Reeves vows to boost Britain's economic growth as well as its house-building programme. What will that mean for the Greenbelt?
A significant moment in Britain's migrant crisis. The first boat under Labour has now arrived. How will the new government deal with this growing issue? We'll be live back in Dover.
And a children's hospital in Kyiv is hit by a missile strike as Russia unleashes a barrage of deadly attacks across Ukraine. Around 20 people are known to have been killed. We'll bring you the latest as Keir Starmer prepares to head to Washington.
And as Emma Raducanu crashes out of Wimbledon, the row over her shock withdrawal from the mixed doubles set rumbles on. Did she ruin Andy Murray's Wimbledon big farewell?
And we've got a bit of a debate this hour too. I don't know if you were shocked or surprised, but a 22-year-old has been elected to Parliament in the shape of Sam Carling. 22 years old, school, then university, then straight to becoming an MP.
The most amazing thing about this is that this guy had his A-level exams cancelled because of COVID. That's how young he is.
2002, I believe he was born.
I always judge. I mean, my sort of delineation line is someone young or not. Were they born before or after 9/11? And
well, that's a nice thing to use as a delineation.
Well, it's sort of like it's the old world and the new world, right?
In many ways.
Like, in many ways, that's sort of a political turn of the century, more so than the year 2000. Perhaps. I don't know, is that...
But anyway, I think it's far too young. I am willing to argue that point. I think 22 years, when you've just come straight out of university, you don't have any life experience, really. How can you represent your constituents in any meaningful fashion?
And yet, this guy is a total egghead. He's got 7 A-levels. He was a star pupil at Cambridge. He was part
You're an
of the
egghead.
Cambridge
I wouldn't have
Union.
wanted you representing me at 22.
But I think Parliament should have diversity. I think it's great that there are some people in their late 70s in Parliament. There should also be some people in their 20s. This shouldn't be the bulk of MPs by any stretch of the imagination. But there are 650 of these people.
But isn't that the problem? Very few of them have ever had what some might say, a proper job, run a business or worked in a factory or, done some manual labour or, actually employed people. So many of these people have done a sort of political route to getting where they are. Is that a problem? I think, yes, it's good to have intelligent people, but I think life experience matters even more.
I think there are too many dunderheads in Parliament. And there was a survey, a simple maths question that was given to MPs in the last Parliament, and half of them got it wrong.
Well, we all remember David Lammy on Mastermind.
Oh, no.
Anyway, gbnews.com/your say is 22 years old, too young to be an MP. But first, your headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. It's just after 1 o'clock. The top story this lunchtime. Downing Street has now admitted the summer will be challenging for the new Labour government after the first boat of migrants since the general election have crossed the Channel this morning. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by a Border Force vessel and taken to a processing centre in the harbour. It brings the total number of migrants crossing so far this year to now 13,500. That's 12% up on the same time last year. Well, those latest small boat arrivals come as the former Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair, is urging the new government to bring in digital ID cards to control immigration. However, the Home Secretary says it's not part of Labour's policy. Instead, Yvette Cooper insists that setting up a new border security command will bring an end to people smuggling across the Channel.
We're setting up a major new approach to law enforcement against the criminal gangs who are undermining our border security and putting lives at risk. This will be a major new border security command that will bring together the work of the National Crime Agency, the work of the Border Force, the work that happens along the Channel, but also the way that these networks stretch right across Europe to go after the gangs that are profiting from this dangerous trade in people and undermining our borders.
Yvette Cooper's comments come after Sir Keir Starmer has announced that the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming that he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. The Conservative MP and former Government Minister Kevin Hollinrake told us this morning he thinks that is a huge mistake.
One thing about the Rwanda legislation is for the first time illegal migrants coming over the Channel went into detention rather than into hotels. What the Labour government will do by scrapping that legislation, They release all those people from detention and they'll now go into hotels or council flats. That's absolutely wrong. We warned it at the time. The Labour Party strategy on this in terms of smashing the gangs is completely flawed. It won't work. Of course you smash the gangs, but that's not the only solution you need.
Sir Keir Starmer insists that Wales has enormous untapped potential as he continues his tour across the UK to reset the relationship between the Westminster government and devolved nations. The Prime Minister will meet First Minister Vaughan Gething in Cardiff later. His visit to the Welsh Parliament is part of a whistle-stop tour, also taking in Scotland and Northern Ireland, where earlier Sir Keir Starmer met with the First and Deputy First Ministers in Belfast. Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill says the new Labour government is a chance to reset relations with Westminster.
We've taken every opportunity to press home the need for a proper funding model for here in order for us to be able to reverse the damage that the Tories have inflicted on us for 14 years. So, look, time will tell in terms of their delivery and what they want to do to actually assist us.
Michelle O'Neill there speaking earlier this morning. Well, the Chancellor has announced there is no time to waste in boosting economic growth and that she's making that her national mission. In her first major speech, Rachel Reeves has promised major changes to speed up infrastructure projects and unlock private investment. She's also argued that 14 years of Conservative rule has cost, she claims, £140 billion in lost growth.
I have repeatedly warned that whoever won the general election would inherit the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War. What I have seen in the past 72 hours has only confirmed that. Our economy has been held back by decisions deferred and decisions ducked. Political self-interest put ahead of the national interest. A government that put party first and country second.
Well, in other news this afternoon from Ukraine, a children's hospital in the capital, Kyiv, has been hit by a major airstrike as Russia launched a barrage of missiles across the country. These are the live pictures coming to us of the scene of that children's hospital, where rescue workers are continuing their search for survivors. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he does believe there are still survivors buried underneath the rubble. That attack is the biggest bombardment of Ukraine for several months, and across the country, at least 20 people have been killed in the attack, around 50 others injured. That's according to the Interior Ministry. Here, Sir Keir Starmer has vowed to rip up what he's called Boris Johnson's botched Brexit deal following Labour's landslide election win. And the Prime Minister says he has already begun to build closer ties with the EU. His new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has started talks in Europe, promising the UK will be a good neighbour. And he wants to reset relations to tackle challenges like support for Ukraine. Labour, though, says they insist that the return of freedom of movement is not on the table. And in France, voters are facing an uncertain future after parliamentary elections there, but there won't be a right-wing government. Marine Le Pen's national rally came third, despite expectations that it would top the poll. Protesters clashed with riot police in Paris after the results were announced last night, leading to a likely hung parliament. It leaves the left-wing New Popular Front coalition predicted to win, with President Macron's centrist group coming in second place. And finally, Hurricane Beryl has made landfall in Texas in the last few minutes after the approaching storm forced the closure of major oil ports and various flight cancellations. Beryl, the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record, was packing winds of up to 80 miles per hour, but the storm is now expected to weaken. Last week, Beryl swept through Jamaica, Grenada, St Vincent and the Grenadines, toppling buildings and power lines and killing at least 11 people. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you for another update at 1:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 9 minutes past 1, and straight to Downing Street now, because our political editor, Christopher Hope, has been at the first media briefing of the new government. Christopher, what went down?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. Yeah, a lot to talk about. So we're here in Downing Street where, yet again, it's about to rain. It seems to have rained all the time in my time in Downing Street over the recent dramatic political moments of the PM, Rishi Sunak, moving out and the new one moving in. I should say the vans behind me are for the former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, moving out of number 10, not the new one, Sir Keir Starmer and his wife, Lady Starmer, moving in. So, but it's all go here in number 10, as you might expect. We have heard today from the PM's official spokesman, the Prime Minister's official spokesman. They've made very clear that they are hitting the ground running. They've talked about this speech by Rachel Reeves, saying that they will now allow on land wind farms. They're going to try and drive through new housing targets with a new national policy planning framework by the end of this month. They're saying essentially new homes must be built and you can't stand in the way of them. Looking into the rest of the week, tomorrow morning at 7:30 there'll be 12 Metro mayors going through the front door behind me for breakfast. Bacon rolls, you might think, with Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. He wants to work with anyone, any colour rosette, red rosette, blue rosette for the Tory party, to ensure that Britain can get building again and build on its economy. Today, he's buzzing around the country. He's been to Northern Ireland. He's off to Wales this afternoon, the Prime Minister, talking to these devolved leaders about how to work together to get the country growing economically. Elsewhere in the briefing, we heard from the government about the border security command. So right now, Yvette Cooper is trying to find someone to lead up tackling the small boats crisis. There are questions about whether on the Rwanda plan, so far £240 million of our money spent. Will the 130 million extra due to be paid be saved? They couldn't answer on that. We heard more from the government on the ongoing reshuffle. No answer on why Emily Thornberry, the long-serving Shadow Attorney General, has been apparently sacked, certainly removed from her job she had when she was Shadow Attorney General, and instead a friend of Sir Keir Starmer appointed for that role. But they did confirm they are, I think, demoting the role of Veterans Minister. That role was one held by Johnny Mercer, the former MP, in a Cabinet office. That role now will be run by the Defence Secretary, John Healey, no longer by an independent or a separate minister who can attend Cabinet. So some would say that is demoting that role. The government says they don't want silos to build up between different areas of policy. We asked them about housing. Are NIMBYs wrong to fight new homes being built? The government said very clearly that what's going to happen next is Angela Rayner, who's the Housing Secretary, the Deputy Prime Minister also, will write to all local authorities making clear what she expects, that new homes must be built, and preferably on brownfield or so-called grey belt land, which is land where, like car parks within the green belt. They said there'll be more plans for more maybe social housing set out in the fiscal event this September. And they are going to go ahead. Other areas of the manifesto, the meeting went on for about an hour. Votes for 16, that's going to happen. They wouldn't condemn, they wouldn't bring in a nationalised Thames Water. They are going to bring in the nationalisation of the railways in due course. There's a new task force being set up on new homes. So a lot to talk about this new government, and they are apparently hitting the ground running. We are expecting meetings today with Wes Streeting and dentists, try and work out how to get more dentists into the system and stop so many people, GB News viewers and listeners, waiting for dental treatment on the NHS, and talks, of course, starting shortly with junior doctors with the NHS strike. Not much on prisons just yet, Tom and Emily, but we're waiting for that.
I wonder why they've got rid of the Veterans Minister role. Johnny Mercer was widely seen to be quite effective in that. That could be viewed as not seeing veterans as particularly important.
Yeah, good question, Emily. I asked the exact same question of the PM spokesman. Don't forget, Sir Keir Starmer was quite prominent on D-Day. He stayed for the entire of D-Day, unlike the guy leaving number 10 behind me, Rishi Sunak. He came back early for a media interview, didn't he? But the idea is that having one person in Cabinet to fight for veterans and for the wider MOD is better, so that's John Healey. I made the point in the briefing just now that the reason why you had Johnny Mercer government outside of the MOD in the Cabinet Office is so often the issue of veterans' rights and veterans' access to services is fought against the Ministry of Defence, and that's why that person was outside of the MOD. That was a Tory experience, but that's been pushed away by the Labour Party. They think it should be run by one person, John Healey, who's in charge of Veterans Affairs.
Now, Chris, I've got to say that you had this briefing inside that famous number 9 Downing Street press briefing room, and yet when Keir Starmer had his first press conference, that was in number 10, in that wood-panelled room that we remember from the early COVID press briefings. I was a little bit surprised as to why Keir Starmer chose a different room, and I wondered if it was because there is a blue background to the press briefing room in number 9, and might the Labour Party be wanting to change the decor?
I think it's a bit more prosaic than that at this stage, Tom. We're on day 4 of this new government. What the plan was, and I went to the press conference for GB News on Saturday, although I wasn't called for a question. I was there trying to ask a question of the Prime Minister. They had planned to have that moment in the number 10 garden, the so-called Rose Garden, with the sun beaming down on the new Labour government. That couldn't happen, but they thought they'd have it in a different place to illustrate the start of a new administration. So the briefing on Saturday was in somewhere called the State Dining Room. As you said, we saw the initial briefings there on TV. All of our viewers and listeners will have heard it when COVID happened. But today's briefing, Tom, was in that the famous number 9 Downing Street spin room. It is very blue. I did ask whether the blue is a problem for the government. They thought not. It simply was they wanted to have it in a different place, perhaps to draw a line from the previous briefings. And it was, of course, the PM doing it, you know, a day after he became Prime Minister, so let's do it in the grandeur of the State Dining Room. I think we're back to that briefing room after that.
You can't have a new Labour government standing in front of a blue backdrop. Surely not. Must be red.
Party,
Must be red. Just a quick question on Robert Jenrick. You sat down with him a little earlier.
Yes.
Do you think he stands a chance of being the next Tory leader?
I think he does, yeah. I think he's quite compelling. He spent the past 8 months since quitting the government as Immigration Minister writing a series of opinion pieces, opinion articles in newspapers like The Telegraph and The Express, trying to appeal, I think, to the party's base. He was quite candid in that interview. It's now available on the GB News website and our YouTube channel. He made very clear he thinks that the government did mess up. It didn't deliver on its promise of cutting immigration as it said it would do in 2019. I also asked him a question that you both wanted me to ask him, which was, are you going to stand for leader? And here's what he had to say.
I honestly think this is just a few days since we've suffered this devastating defeat. Look, I'm sure there will come time for discussing things like that in the future, but I think that's a self-indulgent argument to have today. What I am interested in is ideas and principles, not individuals and personalities.
So not for now, Robert Jenrick says, but let me tell you, that's all the rump Tory party, as it is in the Parliament, is talking about. I'll just briefly tell you that tomorrow the 1922 chairman is elected. It could be Bob Blackman or Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, and then they will liaise with the party about how to establish a new leader, probably in time for the party conference in October.
Interesting stuff, Chris. It's elections all round, even though the elections are over. Christopher Hope, live from Downing Street for us.
Well, over in France, there's been a bit of a shock result in the elections overnight. The left-wing alliance has defied the polls and beaten Marine Le Pen's hard-right National Rally.
But as his centrist Prime Minister resigns, although Macron has said, please stay on, what does a hung Parliament mean for President Macron?
Well, joining us now is Alex Seal, a freelance journalist specialising in French and European politics, who better to talk to. Alex, there's a shock result, but also a bit of a messy result.
Yes, France is in a political deadlock at the moment because no party got a majority. The extreme right didn't get a majority, France Unbowed didn't get one, and Macron's party didn't get one. So it could take weeks or months to form a government. And Macron, he can choose who to name prime minister. So I think he'll have to work with a socialist or with a right-wing party in order to find a government and a new prime minister. And he asked the French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, to stay on in order to... because there are 18 days before the Olympic Games. So it's quite unstable for France at the moment.
Yes, and it's interesting seeing these three big blocs in Parliament, the broad left, the centrists with Macron and the more radical right as well. Of course, there are the sort of establishment Conservative Party there as well, but very small in number. Might we see these blocs start to break apart? That big left bloc includes the more centre-left Socialist Party as well as some communists and Mélenchon's group and everything else. Might we see that broad left group sort of break in two in order to find a coalition that can work together, perhaps with Macron's party, in order to find some sort of governing majority?
Well, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the head of the France Unbowed, said that he would like Emmanuel Macron to fire his prime minister and name a left-wing prime minister. But I don't think Macron will name a left-wing prime minister, France Unbowed prime minister. I think he might name a right-wing or a socialist prime minister. We'll have to wait and see. But for the moment, he asked Gabriel Attal to stay on for the continuity after the elections and maybe after September, after the Olympic Games.
And Alex, why were the left out rioting? They won.
There were some people who were celebrating at the Place de la République in Paris yesterday, and then they were rioting because the far right came third, and also, as you know, people who were wearing masks yesterday in France were fighting with the police and fire officers, so it was quite a messy scene last night.
Sorry, Alex, was this the far right or the far left that was doing the rioting, or a bit of both?
It was far left people who were rioting yesterday, because they still seemed unhappy. There's a hung parliament in France, and there's no really political solution. So there might either be a coalition, or Emmanuel Macron will have to work with several parties in order to form a government. It'll take several months or weeks.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Alex. Great to speak to you. Alex Seal, freelance journalist specialising in French and European politics. Rioting, it's a bit of the national sport, isn't it?
Sore winners, really, aren't they?
It's very odd, isn't it? I guess if you're having a celebration, can easily go into a bit of rioting. Easily done? No.
Well, I just... Yeah, it's the French mindset, though, isn't it? It's just sort of any excuse to, you know, have a fire in the middle of the street, overturn a car and smash some glass bottles. Why not? Yeah,
it seems like the threat or perceived threat of Marine Le Pen really brought that turnout against her. Yeah, so all of those on the left came out to try and stop Marine Le Pen. Anyway, still to come, Labour's Sam Carling. He's become the UK's youngest MP, the baby of the House. But he's just 22 years old. Is he too young to be in Parliament? And should there be a minimum age? Something we'll be debating very shortly.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
He fell into a coma. His family, of course, absolutely distraught. Because Turkey is outside the European Union, it therefore doesn't count under the Global Health Insurance Card scheme, which means that he is liable for these costs, and the family say that he's being held there for until they pay at least half the £41,000 that is owed.
One of our viewers here saying their premium, because they have health conditions, can be as much as £1,000. But if they're going to go overseas to, as you say, a non-EU country, they still should take it. That's the message here, isn't it? Don't take the risk.
Absolutely. Now, if you do have lots of pre-existing medical conditions, or you're an older person, my lovely mother-in-law is going to be 95 this week. She's still travelling, but only within Europe, and only because the cost of insurance is going to be many times the cost of the trip. And she just thinks, OK, well, I'll get emergency medical treatment free if I'm in the European Union and I've got that GHIC card. But beyond that, absolutely not. It's not worth the risk.
You have to have your card, do you, Simon, to get treatment within the EU? You should just apply for that online.
You should certainly apply for it online. Don't go to any of the scam sites that want to charge you money for it, because it's a free card. But actually, if you haven't, it's absolutely not a huge problem. Yes, you have to go through a bit of rigmarole, or at least your family do, to sort it out. But in general, if you go to a public hospital, they will treat you first and ask questions later in the European Union. And if you're a British resident, you should get it for free. Even if you forgot to get the G-Hit card, they will sort it out eventually.
Britain's election channel. GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. It is 26 minutes past 1, but we're going to be talking about what sort of MPs we send to Westminster now, because there was one new MP that caused a bit of a stir online. Why was that? Well, he's just 22 years of age.
Yes, Sam Carling has been elected as the MP for North West Cambridgeshire at the age of just 22. He beat veteran Conservative Shailesh Vara, who'd held the seat for nearly 20 years.
Well, he's been questioned on whether he has enough life experience for the job, and we're asking, should there be a minimum age limit for MPs? Or is it right to pick IQ over experience?
Here to debate this is writer and presenter Emma Webb, who thinks there should be an age limit, and Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe, who says intelligence trumps experience. Oh, well, there you go. Emma, I'll start with you.
Hang on. Anne Widdecombe, you're shaking your head there. Do you have a better introduction?
Talk about intelligence trumping experience. No, I didn't say
OK,
that.
well, you don't think that there should be an age limit, Anne. Anne, let's go to Emma. Sorry about that. Emma, why do you think there should be an age limit? 22 years too young?
I think there's a good argument for having, even if it's just by convention, an age limit. I mean, I wouldn't, if I were running for Parliament, I certainly wouldn't run under the age of say 35. It's just simply because, maybe call me old-fashioned, but I think that people should apprentice themselves to life in some way before they can really properly represent a constituency. I do think that experience and wisdom is something that you can only gain with age. And, if you look at this MP who's only 22, I went to the same university. I would have been in no state, regardless of being a councillor, to become a representative of so many people at such a young age. So I think that there is a good argument for it being conventional for MPs to be of a slightly older age, just simply because I think you need, as I say, the opportunity not only to apprentice yourself to life, but also to have the humility to apprentice yourself to the political and constitutional system in some way.
OK, Anne Widdecombe, what do you make of that?
Well, first of all, there is a minimum age, though it is, of course, 18. You've got to be able to vote in order to stand for Parliament. Now, I don't disagree with much of what Emma says, and I suspect this is an accident. He wasn't expected to beat Shailesh Vara. But I also believe very strongly in democracy, particularly local democracy, when people are choosing their MPs. And I think that if he managed to convince a selection committee, and in turn, he then managed to convince the electorate, then that is simply democracy at work. I have a lot of sympathy with saying that you should have some life experience before you become a member of Parliament. And I think already that convention is pretty well there. If you look at the two big parties, on the whole, unless there is a shock result, they return MPs in their 30s and 40s and way beyond. But an arbitrary age limit, well, you've just excluded Pitt the Younger.
But Anne Widdecombe, I was looking at Pitt the Younger, and he went to university when he was 14. So he gained more life experience more quickly than this chap who's just straight out of university.
Well, look, a lot of people have life experience quite early. For example, quite young kids, 13, 14, can be carers for disabled parents. They get a life experience that most people don't get. Now, I know that doesn't apply here, but it does depend. You have to convince a selection committee that you're ready for the job. I have no doubt at all that they thought they were just giving him a practice run. It didn't turn out like that, but let's see what happens.
Now, Emma, should we be too incensed about all of this? Because, really, we had the same thing when Boris Johnson won his landslide. Sarah Brickliffe got elected at pretty much the same age. Again, probably not expecting to win. When you have big landslides, this sort of thing happens. Does it matter if it's 1 or 2 MPs out of 650?
Well, he, as you say, he's not the only youngest MP, and Emily actually took the thought right out of my head there, because someone like Pitt the Younger, of course, he did go to university when he was 14. By the age of 17, younger than most people go to university now, he was already studying at Lincoln's Inn to be a lawyer. So people in the past had much more life experience at an earlier age. If you think about the kind of maturity of young people straight out of university, I do think it's a problem if you have too many MPs who are of a younger age. And we do seem to be seeing... Nan's shaking her head there.
I said you don't have too many. I mean, I would agree with you. If our Parliament was that age, I'd be worried. You don't have any. That's why we're debating it, because it's unusual. That's why we're debating it.
I think actually, it's also that we have an issue in Parliament with not trying to not be too harsh with mediocrity, and I think adding younger, inexperienced people into a house that is already somewhat mediocre, the quality of debate is already extremely poor. There are less people for them to apprentice themselves.
But Emma, does it matter that this guy has got 7 A-levels, that he's a bit of an egghead, not just visually, but clearly academically? And does it matter that actually, in the last Parliament, there was a survey of MPs asking them a simple maths question, and 49% of them got it wrong. I wonder, Emma, is it not better that we have people who can, add up?
Well, I mean, just because you've got all of those A-levels doesn't necessarily mean that you can add up. In fact, just because you've been to Cambridge doesn't necessarily mean that you could do simple addition. But look, I think we do have a serious problem, like I say, with mediocrity in Parliament. That is more of the problem than age is an issue. But of course, it's going to exacerbate it. And frankly, the qualifications that you have on paper mean absolutely nothing. You can have all of the technical knowledge in the world, but governing is a practical art form, and you need to be able to apprentice yourself.
Yes, and if you had to choose, would you choose intelligence or life experience, if you had to choose?
I don't accept that it's that sort of binary choice. And let me say this, you need all sorts of abilities in Parliament. You need people who can analyse legislation, who can analyse arguments, who can weigh up evidence. He, I reckon, will be pretty good at doing that. You need people who can speak, but you've got some MPs who can't speak for toffee. You've got a whole range of experience there in Parliament. You've got a range of characters. You've got, the very flamboyant like Nigel Farage, and the extremely shy and retiring. You hardly know their MPs. You've got the range there. Now, don't let's start getting too prescriptive.
Well, Anne Widdecombe, Emma Webb, thank you very much for joining us and debating this topic, which I'm sure will be popping up and about as this Parliament gets.
Yes, it got me thinking. But still to come, there's been a deadly missile strike on a children's hospital in Kyiv. We're going to get the latest on Russia's bombardment of Ukraine next. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News.
Yeah, hi.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 1:30, and the top story from the newsroom this afternoon. Downing Street has now admitted the summer will be challenging for the new Labour government as the first boat of migrants since the general election has crossed the English Channel today. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by a border force vessel and taken to a migrant processing centre in the Dover Harbour. It brings the total number of migrants crossing so far this year to now 13,500. That's up 12% on the same time last year. Well, those latest small boat arrivals come as former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair is urging the new government to bring in digital ID cards to control immigration. However, the Home Secretary says it's not part of Labour's policy. Instead, Yvette Cooper insists setting up a new border security command will bring an end to people smuggling across the English Channel. And that comes after Sir Keir Starmer announced the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. The Chancellor has announced the Labour government is ripping up planning rules to build more homes, claiming she's prepared for short-term political pain to get Britain building again. In her first major speech, Rachel Reeves has said she's ordered officials to produce an assessment of what she's described as the financial mess left by the Conservatives. And she's also argued that 14 years of Tory rule has cost £140 billion in lost growth. Next to the latest from Ukraine, European leaders are calling on the entire international community to condemn today's bombings in Kyiv, which also hit a children's hospital, as war crimes. Here are the live pictures coming to us from the scene of that hospital, where rescue efforts continue. President Volodymyr Zelensky saying he does believe there are still survivors to be found under the rubble. It's after Russia launched its biggest barrage of missiles across the country for several months, and in the last few minutes, President Zelensky, whilst in Poland, has been holding a minute of silence after the attacks and told reporters there are now at least 27 people who have been killed. Meanwhile, in France, voters are facing an uncertain future after parliamentary elections there, but there won't be a right-wing government. Marine Le Pen's national rally came third, despite expectations it would top the poll. Protesters clashed with riot police in Paris after the results were announced last night, leading to a likely hung parliament. The left-wing New Popular Front coalition is predicted to win, with President Macron's centrist group coming in second place. And finally, Boeing has agreed to pay £190 million in fines to authorities in the US to avoid a criminal trial. That's over 2 crashes of its 737 MAX jetliners. The plane maker has pleaded guilty to a fraud charge following the deaths of 346 passengers and crew in 2018 and 2019. Families of the victims, though, have criticised the decision, saying it allows Boeing to avoid full responsibility. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. I'll get my voice sorted before the next update, coming at 2 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Today we'll bring some showers across northern parts, but further south it's going to be cloudier and there'll be some persistent rain pushing its way in. That's because there's an area of low pressure and associated fronts gradually making their way northwards. So a pretty cloudy day across many southern parts. Outbreaks of rain at times becoming more persistent later on. Like I said, across northern areas, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. And then in between, across some central northern parts of England and perhaps North Wales, some decent dry and at times sunny weather. And here we're going to get the highest temperatures, just about getting into the low 20s. But where it's cloudy and wet, it is going to feel pretty cool for the time of year. Some heavy persistent rain then going to push its way in initially across parts of the southwest as we go through this evening. Could cause some problems on the roads during the evening rush hour, and we're likely to see some high totals building up as well. Turning cloudier as we go into the night across central parts, but further north through this evening, some late sunshine to look forward to, but still a scattering of showers around. Some of them perhaps could be a little bit on the heavy side. Overnight, that rain in the southwest is going to spill its way across many parts of England and Wales, but it will be in the southwest where we see the highest totals. Could be 30 millimetres in just 6 hours, perhaps 60 to 70 millimetres in 24 hours over the high ground such as Dartmoor. So a wet story across the southern half of the UK as we head towards dawn tomorrow morning. Clearer skies though further north across parts of Scotland. We're likely to dip into single figures. Elsewhere a mild start but a wet start for many parts of England and Wales. That rain then continues to gradually make its way northward, so it will push into southern parts of Scotland and eastern parts of Northern Ireland as we go through tomorrow, clinging on to some dry, sunny weather towards the far northwest of the UK. And further south, it's going to turn a little bit drier, but still some outbreaks of rain, quite a bit of cloud, and still a relatively cool feel for the time of year. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Hi, good afternoon to you. I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Scotland firstly. The southbound M9 in Stirling has a lane shut from Bannockburn from the M80 junction 9 down towards junction 8. But the head of Kinnaird turn off. There's investigation work continuing from a previous collision. There's queues in South Lanarkshire too. The southbound M74 junction 8 to 9, that's Candyside to Blackwood, has a lane shut. There's congestion back to Larkhall at junction 7. 2 cars there involved in a collision. And the eastbound M8 towards Edinburgh, a travel time of about half an hour stop-start towards Hermiston Gate there at junction 1. And Axminster in Devon, the Charmouth Road, the A35. Now that's closed both ways between the Hunters Lodge Inn and the Red Cross junction. A collision there currently being recovered, causing 1 or 2 delays at the moment in both directions. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 14 minutes past 1. Now, a children's hospital in Kyiv has been hit by a major airstrike as Russia launches a barrage of missiles across Ukraine.
The attack is the biggest bombardment of the Ukrainian capital for several months. And across the country, at least 20 people have been killed in these hypersonic missile attacks. Around 50 others injured, according to the Interior Ministry.
Yes, and this comes on the eve of a critical NATO summit. Joining us now is Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about what has happened and whether this NATO summit is crucial here?
It's a huge bombardment. It's the biggest for many, many months. Why it has come, I think it's fairly clear. The Ukrainians were managing to make some good strikes, effective strikes inside Russia on ammunition dumps, including some reports that they hit a train line carrying ammunition from Korea, North Korea. There's that there was the strike back, but it's also, it is timed, one can be pretty sure, for the maximum propaganda value and impact as we come up to this very critical NATO summit. It's the 75th anniversary summit, but it's going to be no birthday party. It's got some very serious business to discharge. From tomorrow, it goes through till Wednesday evening. It's a 2-day meeting. And I think that that's behind it. But actually, these developments in Ukraine are very, very concerning indeed. The volume, but also the kind of missiles involved. And finally, of course, the dreadful effect by hitting a children's hospital, because the Russians may claim, as they have already, to be striking aviation and military targets. They knew pretty darn well where this hospital was.
Robert, this is such a pivotal moment for NATO, and it's a very, very interesting one, because, of course, Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, will be there at the 75th summit, and he might be the person of sort of any large country there that looks like he'll be there for the longest time. I mean, Biden might be gone within a matter of months. Macron might be gone within the next year or two. Scholz is looking like he's 20 points behind in the polls. Trudeau is 20 points behind in the polls in Canada. I mean, it might look like sort of Britain is got the novice here at this summit who doesn't know how anything works in terms of international defence. But it looks like our Prime Minister will be the one who's actually there for the longest time.
Yes, he and very possibly Mrs. Maloney of Italy. That makes an interesting combination of the medium-level European powers. I'll tell you who will be looking to Keir Starmer, and very quickly, for a decisive lead, and it's our Nordic allies, in which UK leads in a club of 10 powers called the Joint Expeditionary Force. Because one of the things that's going to be said absolutely clearly at this NATO summit, one is that Europe has got to do more in its own interest and in its own defence dealing with Ukraine, because it is an actual problem in Europe's backyard. Europe also has got to do more to back up in the Middle East. Britain again becomes critical because of the NATO bases, particularly as that war shows every risk or threat of expanding if there's a war in South Lebanon between Israel, the third front in that particular war this summer.
And Robert, are we likely to see bombardments of this scale continue?
Yes, we are, because I think that this is where the ball has been dropped, to mix a metaphor. The one thing that that Kiev, in other words, Ukraine, really needs is real help with its air defenses. And can I add, air offense, which is where the American political leadership has been weak. They need to get at the aircraft launching the cruise missiles, as well as things like the Kinzhal, the hypersonic missile. They've got to get at the launch bases. You can't be squeamish to say, is it inside the Russian border, or is it outside the Russian border? It's the kind of American weaponry like the TACMS missile. They've got to get in there to stand a chance, because Ukraine is taking a battering.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. Always good to speak to you.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, Emma Raducanu has crashed out of Wimbledon, but the row over her shock withdrawal from the mixed doubles rumbles on. We're going to have the very latest after this short break.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Question is...
should our museums stay free for everyone and anyone, or should we be charging our tourists?
So many of the artefacts are from around the world, stolen actually. I think it's almost to add insult to injury to ask people to pay to see the artefacts that were taken without their permission. One of the things that the museum set itself up for is a kind of World Heritage where you can see the stuff they took from your country free of charge, because the British state's willing to do that. Is one of the reasons why we hold on to many of the artefacts from around the world instead of giving them back.
I mean, that's a noble argument, Wayman, but none of the other countries in the world that also contain artefacts from all over the world indulge in that, do they? We still have to pay to see anything that's come from the UK that might be overseas?
No, but the absolute truth is that we've stolen a lot more over many more years than anybody else, because we're a very, we had a very, very big empire, and during that time, taking things from other countries without their permission.
And I think our wonderful country, the United Kingdom, is the cradle of modern civilization, not of the ancient world, but of the modern world. You know, for centuries, we've contributed things to the world which has spread out around the world, and the influence that we've put upon countries around the globe has been massively significant. I think it's a privilege for people to be able to come to this country and track the history of our country through our museums. I can't understand why they've ever been free. The upkeep of museums runs into hundreds of millions of pounds a year. Somebody's got to maintain them and keep them good. Somebody's got to go around the world and collect the artifacts which are in our museums. And I've always have the adage in life, if something is free, it's probably not worth having.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:49 in the afternoon, of course, and Emma Raducanu has faced a barrage of criticism after she dramatically pulled out of the mixed doubles with Andy Murray. Does she deserve that criticism?
Also in sporting news, excitement is, of course, building ahead of England's semi-final crash with the Netherlands in the Euros on Wednesday. Fans, of course, hoping for an improvement on what have been some pretty questionable performances. So let's speak with the sports broadcaster Chris Scudder, who is in Germany for us. And we're going to start with the football, of course, Chris, because a lot is resting on Wednesday.
Yeah, semi-final doesn't get any bigger, really. I think there's a real sense now that because England have got to where they have without really hitting anything like top gear, that they have a great chance of making it all the way to Sunday's final. There's Phil Foden. The one thing that stands out for me, and we've seen this in previous golden generations, that England have not been that happy. There's always been something getting wrong. But look at those smiles. Bukayo Saka, Phil Foden, Barrechi Eze, they're all the greatest gift I think that Gareth Southgate has. He might not be the most technical coach, but he has a harmony among those top players, some of the best players in the world. And if they're happy and they're winning games, that is the main thing. And you can see them there riding around the countryside, not a care in the world. Big pressure games to come on Wednesday and hopefully on Sunday as well. But I think it's all looking pretty good right now.
Yes, and it was quite the performance when it came to that penalty shootout. I was very impressed. I can barely watch these things, but the relief when they kept going in, I mean, it was astounding how happy everyone was after it looked like it was going the wrong way. Chris, I want to get you involved in this controversy over at the tennis at Wimbledon. Emma Raducanu, I think she's being unfairly criticised for pulling out. She said she had a stiff wrist. She's got to put herself first, surely.
You're dead right. I mean, I don't quite understand the argument really against. You know, Andy Murray's a very nice man. I'm sure he understands. And if the boot had been on the other foot, as it were, and he had a bad wrist and he was playing his last singles at Wimbledon, then I don't think he would have played either. You know, I can understand the upset because people wanted to see Murray play one last time. But, you know, the priority for these players, these are elite athletes, is the singles. You know, she felt, you know, it would have compromised her. In the end, she lost, of course, to Lulu Sun, who was a bit like her, came from absolute nowhere, a qualifier, who might yet go all the way. I think I saw odds of about 1,000 to 1 the other day. Complete unknown, really. But no, the priority is for the singles player, the girl of the moment, to put all her efforts into that. And if she didn't feel that she was right, then she was right to pull out, in my opinion.
But if she had this dodgy wrist and she didn't feel 100% up to it, why did she allow it to get that far? Why did she say at the last minute, yes, I'll do this double set with you, and then it was press released and pushed around the world and everyone was looking forward to it? I mean, she could have just initially said, look, I would love to, but I'm not feeling up to it.
Yeah, listen, I think it was because at the time, how many days was it before that she was even asked to do it?
It was about a day, wasn't it?
We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
And she was, you know, she was flattered. You know, Murray's a legend, and she, you know, is desperate to do the right thing. So I think she felt she could do it. But you know, if she did have something physically wrong, why would you then play a doubles match that would compromise your form in the singles? Simple as that. End of story.
End of story for Chris. Thank you so much. Chris Scudder, sports broadcaster, of course, there in Germany for the football. I think it's a bit sexist. I don't usually say that, but I do. If it was the other way round, I don't think anyone would have any criticism for Andy Murray. And the fact that his mum got involved too.
It was weird his mum seems pretty overbearing, doesn't she? But I don't know if it's sex. I mean, if it was a bloke who said I would perform this last singles for you the day before, and then on the day said, no, I can't do it, I mean, you'd think that he'd have at least, you know...
I mean, it's not ideal. It's not ideal, of course, but I do think it's not Emma's duty to, you know, give him his last farewell, is it?
Forward to it, right? It was...
No, but she probably wanted to do it, and then it, you know...
It was pushed out to every mobile phone in the country. They should have had some sort of... If there was this question mark...
That's not her fault that the media goes crazy, is it?
If there was a question mark over it, then they should have said, oh, we're hoping to do this, but, you know, we're not quite sure. I mean, there was... It was just managed incredibly poorly.
Perhaps. But yes, I don't know. I think it would fit. If it was the other way around, it wouldn't be the same. Anyway, David Lammy strikes a new tone with the European Union. Lots of talk of closer relations. What does this all mean? We'll dissect that after the short break.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. It is going to turn pretty wet for many of us as we go through the rest of today, overnight and into tomorrow, because there is a system that is pushing its way northwards, and this is going to bring a lot of cloud and some heavy persistent rain, especially across parts of the southwest as we go through this evening and overnight, with a warning out because we are likely to see some disruption. Some flooding is possible, as well as some difficult driving conditions too. That rain will spread across much of England and Wales as we go through the night, so a wet picture for many of us. It does mean temperatures are generally going to hold up, so a mild start to the day for many. Though further north across parts of Scotland in particular, here there will be clear skies overnight, so it could be a bit fresh first thing. However, once the sun comes up, we will see our temperatures lifting a little bit, although they are likely to stay a bit below average for the time of year generally. But a mostly fine picture through the morning across much of Scotland. Rain starting to push its way in across parts of Northern Ireland and spreading across much of the northern half of England and Wales too. Further south, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared through by around 8-9 o'clock in the morning, but it is going to stay pretty cloudy for many, and there will be further outbreaks of rain, these continuing as we go through the day, and there could still be some heavy ones. The more persistent rain though will be spilling its way across parts of northern England into Northern Ireland and into southern Scotland, across the far northwest of Scotland, clinging on to some drier weather for a time. Like I said though, temperatures a little disappointing for the time of year. We may just about scrape into the low 20s where we get any drier or possibly brighter breaks. That rain in the north continues to edge a bit further northwards, the far northwest of Scotland, clinging on to some fine weather through the evening. Elsewhere, quite a bit of cloud, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around. Some very wet weather to come across northern parts on Wednesday. Otherwise, there is a drying trend as we go through this week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, Just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 8th of July. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Labour is getting down to business. The Shadow Chancellor is... Oh, sorry, the Chancellor. Honestly, I'm stuck in this mind frame. Right, the new Chancellor has vowed to boost economic growth and get Britain building with housing. We'll have the very latest from the government's first media briefing.
Yes, we will. And there's been a significant moment in Britain's migrant crisis. The first boat under Labour has now arrived. How will the new government deal with this growing issue? We'll be in Dover.
And the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, says he wants to reset Britain's ties with the EU. But what might that mean? Is there going to be a Brexit renegotiation? And might voters feel betrayed?
Yes, what exactly is this closening of ties with the European Union? What does that actually look like? They say they want to make the Brexit trade deal better, but surely that would come with strings attached.
Well, it's interesting. It was already due to be reviewed in 2026. Sort of that's written into the text of the treaty. But with a review, I think originally what the government probably meant was, oh, we'll just tighten up this and change, sort of dot the I's and cross the T's. This could now be turned into quite a substantial renegotiation, not within the single market, but perhaps a more Theresa May-like deal where you sort of shadow EU rules, where you have a common rule book, as Theresa May called it, where if the EU tries to legislate for something, you say we won't do that law exactly.
What's the point of being outside?
Same goal.
What's the point of being outside if you just accept all the rules? Wasn't the whole point of Brexit that we make our own? Also, David Lammy's views on the old Brexiteers are known.
That's true. He once compared Brexiteers to Nazis in a rally in
probably a mistake, that
Parliament
one.
Square. I'm sure he would probably take that back now that he's the chief diplomat. But I do think that there is this big question. But ultimately, is this a point of failure of the last government? Not enough EU laws were repealed, and now potentially, instead of getting rid of EU laws, we're actually going to import a whole new load of them.
Well, we'll find out more for you. gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch. Are you worried about all this talk of closer ties with the European Union? But let's get the headlines with Sam.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 2, and the top story this afternoon, Downing Street has admitted the summer will be challenging for the new Labour government as the first boat of migrants since the general election has crossed the English Channel this morning. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by a Border Force vessel and taken to a migrant processing centre in Dover Harbour. It brings the total number of illegal migrants crossing so far this year to now 13,500. That's up 12% on the same time last year. Well, the latest small boat arrivals today come as former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair is urging the new government to bring in digital ID cards to control immigration. However, the Home Secretary says it's not part of Labour's policy. Instead, Yvette Cooper insists that setting up a new border security command will bring an end to people smuggling across the Channel. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer announced the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. Conservative MP and former government minister Kevin Hollinrigg told us this morning he thinks that is a huge mistake.
We're setting up a major new approach to law enforcement against the criminal gangs who are undermining our border security and putting lives at risk. This will be a major new border security command that will bring together the work of the National Crime Agency, the work of the Border Force, the work that happens along the Channel, but also the way that these networks stretch right across Europe to go after the gangs that are profiting from this dangerous trade in people and undermining our borders.
Yvette Cooper's comments come after Sir Keir Starmer announced the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. I believe we've just already talked about this. I will move on to the next story. And Sir Keir Starmer is insisting that Wales has enormous untapped potential as he continues his UK tour to reset the relationship between the Westminster government and the devolved nations. The Prime Minister will meet First Minister Vaughan Gething in Cardiff this afternoon. His visit to the Welsh Parliament is part of a whistle-stop tour also taking in Scotland and earlier Northern Ireland, where Mr Starmer met with the First and Deputy First Ministers in Belfast. The Prime Minister says the UK needs to be able to demonstrate a willingness to operate the existing Brexit trade agreement for Northern Ireland in order to secure a better deal with the EU.
We can get a better deal than the botched deal that Boris Johnson brought home, and we will work on that, understanding the work that needs to be done and the nature of the challenge, but yes, we do want to improve that relationship. In the meantime, we do have to get on with implementing the important changes that are necessary under the existing arrangements that we've got, because we're not going to be able to get a better relationship unless we demonstrate a commitment to the relationship and the agreements that have already been put in place.
While the Prime Minister is continuing his UK tour, Rachel Reeves has promised today a planning revolution during her first major speech as Chancellor. The new resident of 11 Downing Street says she'll boost house building and allow new onshore wind projects. It's part of a plan for what Rachel Reeves is calling sustained economic growth, arguing that 14 years of Conservative rule has cost £140 billion in lost growth.
I have repeatedly warned that whoever won the general election would inherit the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War. What I have seen in the past 72 hours has only confirmed that. Our economy has been held back by decisions deferred and decisions ducked. Political self-interest put ahead of the national interest. A government that put party first and country second.
And next to Ukraine, where a children's hospital in the country's capital has been left in ruins after a major airstrike this morning, the biggest in several months. These are the live pictures coming to us from the scene of that children's hospital, where rescue efforts continue to try and recover as many people who may still be trapped in the rubble. President Volodymyr Zelensky saying in the last few minutes that he does believe people can still be found, after he was holding a minute's silence during a conference with the Polish Prime Minister. Authorities reporting up to 9 people have now been killed and more than 30 wounded in that strike. Ukraine is accusing Moscow of firing more than 40 missiles targeting different sites across the country. However, the Kremlin is accusing Kyiv of hysterics, claiming a Ukrainian air defence missile was to blame, although it's offered no evidence so far. That comes as the new Defence Secretary has pledged to step up the UK's support for Ukraine's continued fight against Russia. And in a meeting with President Zelensky, John Healey announced that Britain will fast-track military support promised in April of this year within the next 100 days. The new package includes 50 small military boats to support river and coastal operations, along with 40 demining vehicles. 1 million people are now without power in Houston, Texas, after Hurricane Beryl made landfall there. It comes after the approaching storm has already forced the closure of major oil ports and flight cancellations. Beryl, the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record, was packing winds of up to 80 miles an hour. But the storm is now understood to be weakening. Last week, Beryl swept through Jamaica, Grenada, St Vincent and the Grenadines, toppling buildings and power lines and, sadly, killing at least 11 people. And finally, in sport, British hopes in the singles at Wimbledon have come to an end as week 2 of the tournament gets started this afternoon. One-time Grand Slam champion Emma Raducanu was the last Brit standing, but insists she has no regrets after a difficult defeat ending her campaign last night. It followed the 21-year-old's decision on Saturday to pull out of a mixed doubles match with 3-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray, ending his All-England club career. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you for another update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 2, and our top story this hour. Labour has got down to business and is indeed now governing Britain. The Chancellor delivered her first speech promising to boost economic growth, and the party has given its first media briefing in government, or should I say, the government has given its first media briefing.
Yes, GB News political editor Christopher Hope joins us now. Christopher, any surprises?
Well, no, not really. And most people who had jobs in the shadow cabinet have got those same jobs back. And notably exception, as of today, is Emily Thornberry, the former Shadow Attorney General, has not got a job in government and has issued a statement about how disappointed she is. That's been some surprise. But the government is cracking on with governing. You saw there on the news, Sir Keir Starmer has been to Northern Ireland, off to Wales this afternoon. The Chancellor's given a speech in the Treasury. Rachel Reeves, of course, she's made clear how she wants to put planning and planning reform at the heart of her plans in government. She wants to publish a new national planning policy framework. The planning rule book will be out by the end of July, making clear that authorities, councils have to get building. Angela Rayner, she's a Deputy Prime Minister, she's going to write to all council leaders saying they are required to start building new homes. They're going to get a grip of this issue, and some would say, many would say, not before time, but already there's pushback from some Tory MPs on Twitter, on social media, saying you can't do this, you can't build here for various reasons. I mean, they will come up against anger, opposition from some communities who feel that some of this building is not appropriate for their areas, and that's why I think the government will be tested quite quickly on its new policy. Elsewhere in health, we've got Wes Streeting meeting with nurses, trying to get 7,500 with dentists, trying to get 7,500 appointments heard by people who need it. Plans in place already to try and hire 6,500 new teachers. In the reshuffle that's still ongoing, we've seen how the veterans minister has been removed from the cabinet. That role will now be taken by John Healey. And another area which is causing some comment, let's say that, on social media, Annalise Dodds. Now, she, of course, is the former party chairman. She is now the Minister for Equalities and Women, but she also had some issues, I think, in the past. She according to the writer J.K. Rowling, she couldn't say what a woman was. So you've got a women's minister here who was pressed on Woman's Hour on the BBC by Emma Barnett about what is a woman, and we know we don't want it to get too graphic at lunchtime on GB News, but she had a problem saying what that was, and that's caused some unease, I think, in some quarters on Twitter.
Too, that it took about 2 days for this appointment to be made. Oh, no, not 2 days. The election was on Thursday. I mean, how much longer is it now? Many days until a woman and equalities minister has been selected.
It was an excruciating interview, that one with Emma Barnett. Excruciating. Round in circles.
But, Christopher, I want to talk about what the government is doing with regard to this policy blitz. Is it really a policy blitz, or is it small fry? Of course, there are some building projects that the government has deliberately selected and said we're going to expedite these and go ahead. But it's not sort of broad-ranging planning reform. It's not a different way to get approval in the country.
Well, Tom, I think they are going to change things. This National Planning Policy Framework, when that's published again in July, and there was a big battle by the Tory government back in 2012, 2013, when they tried to put a presumption of sustainable development into this rule book. And I'm not surprised they're going to republish it. I'm also not surprised it's the Treasury doing so. That will put an economic necessity under planning rules to get building and get things happening. Even you may even find your sphere being built, Tom. I know you've been concerned about that being vetoed in East London. That kind of thing, the kind of thing which was being turned down. There might be some new freedoms possibly for authorities to allow these things to go through, and that's coming from the Treasury, not from the Communities department. Of course, Angela Rayner, who runs that department now, she'll be writing to council leaders. I think the manifesto Labour put out there for the past 6 weeks was quite moderate in what it was saying. It was quite limited, really. I think there's lots of room to go outside that in the future. But as things stand, they are hitting the ground running, trying to deliver on what they promised in that manifesto. And we'll wait and see on what comes next.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Christopher Hope, our political editor, bringing us the very latest on this new government. Now, a little earlier in the show, Christopher actually sat down with Robert Jenrick. Why? Because Robert Jenrick could be one of the contenders for the next Tory leader.
Well, let's have a listen.
I honestly think this is just a few days since we've suffered this devastating defeat. Look, I'm sure there will come time for discussing things like that in the future, but I think that's a self-indulgent argument to have today. What I am interested in is ideas and principles, not individuals and personalities.
It's interesting, this sort of proto-leadership election, the election before the election, this sort of dark shadow leadership election, where we're hearing the stall being set out from various people, their analysis of what went wrong, but none of them are saying that they're standing for leader quite yet.
I think that's wise. There's a lot of soul-searching to go on within the party, I reckon. But both of them, well, both of key contenders, I mean, there are more, of course, but Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, who we've heard from on this channel in the last couple of days, they've both been writing scathing columns in various newspapers for months. For months and months and months, setting out all the problems that they see within their own party.
It's also interesting to look at those who haven't spoken out yet, but who are presumed to be contenders. Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly. Now, it will be interesting to see whether their sort of sit back, don't try and hog the limelight approach might work for them, or if that's going to sort of snuff out a campaign. Well, why don't we talk to one man who might well be already being lobbied by potential candidates, the Conservative Member of Parliament for Mid-Buckinghamshire, Greg Smith. Now, Greg, you're just about one of the only members of Parliament in your part of the world who's left who's a Conservative. Were you shocked to see quite so many colleagues, particularly rural constituency colleagues, fall on Thursday?
Yeah, Tom, it was a brutal night, and we had 5 counts in the same sports hall across Buckinghamshire. Myself and Joy Morrissey held on, and we lost some great people like Steve Baker and Rob Butler. And it was a brutal night, and I think we've got to reflect on the reasons that we lost that election, why across the whole country we as the Conservatives had what can only be described as a comprehensive kicking. There's no sugarcoating that. We've got to call it what it was and reflect on why we lost, understand why we lost, reflect on those very difficult conversations we all had, even those of us that held on, had on the doorsteps from voters, our residents, our constituents, and then start the process of earning the right to be heard again. Because I think one of the big problems we suffered in the general election is that it didn't really matter what we put in our manifesto. It didn't really matter what we were saying in press conferences and on our leaflets. We had straightforwardly lost the right to even be heard. And that is the first step that whoever is the next leader of the Conservative Party needs to take head on and deliver on.
How does it make you feel to hear the now Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, talking about cutting red tape when it comes to planning? That's something that I've heard you talk about many times. They're, doing the things that you probably wish the Conservatives had done.
I mean, to hear a Labour government talking about red tape and cutting red tape is always a challenge. We know that every Labour government in the past has just piled the red tape on. So we've got to challenge them on what they actually mean by reforming the planning system. Planning was a massive issue in my campaign in Mid-Buckinghamshire. We've got things like HS2 that has destroyed vast swathes of our countryside for no good purpose and at a cost that the country simply can't afford, as well as actually Buckinghamshire has built tens of thousands of new homes over recent decades. That's part of the reason why Buckinghamshire had such a significant set of boundary changes, because population growth has been so significant for us. And people are fed up of seeing more and more of the countryside built upon when we've got those brownfield redevelopment sites in the towns of Aylesbury and High Wycombe and in Milton Keynes just next door to us. So it's about building the right homes and the right commercial development in the right places. And if Labour's answer is just this, countryside, that thing over there, build on that, it's going to be incredibly unpopular in constituencies like mine. And it'll be my job to stand up and fight for the homes that we absolutely need to be built in the right places.
Now you're in Westminster, back after that fairly bruising weekend. A lot of new faces in Westminster, but some old ones too. Have many of your Conservative colleagues been sounding you out in terms of putative leadership bids?
I'll be honest with you, Tom, after my count on Friday, I went and spent 3 days at the British Grand Prix. So I've been in hiding for 3 days, enjoying the best of British motorsport with a British winner yesterday at Silverstone. Yes, clearly there are colleagues phoning us up all the time at the moment. Of course, we are about to go into a leadership election, but I think we need to stop and breathe and work out the process by which we are going to elect the next leader of the Conservative Party. That starts with the 1922 committee electing a new chairman this week. And from my point of view, we've absolutely categorically got to make sure that the members of the Conservative Party are involved in that final choice. I think it would be the final nail in the coffin for the mass membership of the Conservative Party if that right to choose the leader was taken away from them. And so the first fight in this process isn't who's going to be the next leader, but how the next leader is chosen. And if we take the vote away from the members, that is just wholly unacceptable to me and certainly to my local members in mid-Buckinghamshire.
And which direction do you want the party to go in? There seem to be two different views. Some people think it should go to the right, be very conservative, back to basics. Others think that, no, you need to be more One Nation, more liberal, more progressive, more centrist. Where do you come down on that?
Well, it's quite clear, and you've heard me talk on your programme and other GB News shows in the past where I sit in the Conservative Party. I'm a small state, freedom-loving, classical, liberal, free market Conservative. But the first thing we actually need to do, on top of earning the right to be heard again, is actually to unite. Because over the last few years, we have undoubtedly splintered far too much the talk of the five families, the talk of the One Nations versus the right of the party. I'd actually argue there are multiple rights of the Conservative Party. There's the much more authoritarian right, and there's the more free market, more libertarian right that I would more closely associate with. But all parties are these grand coalitions. And the most important thing I think we've got to do, because I had it on the doorsteps, I had people saying, oh, you lot are just fighting like ferrets in a sack and the rest of it, is we've got to come across as one Conservative voice, one Conservative party. And of course I'd like that to be more in the image of my own conservatism, but accepting that as all parties, Labour included, are grand coalitions, we've got to find a path that can bring everyone in the party together to present that united front to the country that will be the first step in that right to be heard again.
Now, it does seem that there is some momentum towards less momentum in this leadership contest, that many people are saying, actually, now is the time to take a breath. There's no rush in choosing a new leader. When do you think that the contest will actually get going, take place? Might it be that there's a sort of beauty parade of candidates at Conservative Party conference?
I mean, that's certainly one option that probably should be on the table. And in 2005, that is precisely what happened. Actually, everyone went into the 2005 party conference thinking David Davis was probably going to have it in the bag. He'd win hands down when the final vote came. And David Cameron literally came out of nowhere and won that contest and went on to be the next Conservative Prime Minister after that conference, having had, a pretty similar trashing at the polls after the 97, 01 and 2005 general elections. I do think it's important, though, if we are to come together as a party, if we are to form a credible opposition as much as we can with 121 members of Parliament to this massive majority Labour government that the country chose last Thursday, is we probably do need to get on with it, not within weeks, but within a couple of months, to have a new leader ready for the Conservative Party conference, to be taking the battle to Labour, to be taking the battle to reform, and the battle to the Liberal Democrats. Let's not forget the Liberal Democrats, have 72 members of Parliament, up from 11. I'm not sure anybody wants a Liberal Democrat government out there. I certainly got no sense of that in my own constituency, where actually the Liberal Democrats came.
You've certainly got several battlefronts. But thank you very much, Greg Smith, Conservative MP for Mid Buckinghamshire, held on to his seat.
Well, still to come, plenty of political chaos in France. We'll be hopping across the channel after this.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
As he turns 80 next month, Thomas Markle gives a moving interview to the Mail newspaper, saying, "I've never been one for birthdays, but I know the one person I most want to hear from, Meghan, will not be in touch. I'd love to meet my grandchildren," he said, "but I'd be happy with a photograph at this stage." Well, for reaction to this sad story, I'm delighted to welcome US political and royal commentator Hilary Fordwich.
He also added that he never thought that he'd have something in common with the king. And of course, the king doesn't know his grandchildren either. And I think that's a very sad state of affairs. What is very important, the important thread here, though, is the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of Meghan Markle claiming to care about people and all the tours they go on where they have empathy for people, and yet her very own father. And also, Mark, it really happened so fast. In 2016, she posted on Instagram that her daddy was the greatest in the world. And the other thing is that she claimed that she had made everything herself and she came from a very poor family. Actually, she had a very privileged childhood, being sent to private schools in California.
Well, poor old Thomas Markle, as he approaches his 80th birthday, is a serious thorn in the side and, frankly, an ongoing embarrassment to the couple.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that's immensely sad is that, Meghan Markle wasn't happy to be number 2 to Princess Catherine, and now she ends up being really nothing. I do think that a tiger doesn't change its stripes. What we have to look at here is track record. Somebody who's dumped her friends, dumped her own family, dumped her country originally when she came over to the UK, and even her adopted dog. There is a track record there, and Thomas Markle has sadly said it's referred to now as being Markled when you're dumped.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. 26 minutes past 2. Now, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has embarked on a Europe-wide tour of schmoozing various world leaders in this part of the world in order to try and perhaps gain closer alignment with the European Union.
Yes, indeed. He's visited Germany, Poland and Sweden as part of a plan to reset relations with the European Union, despite having no plans to rejoin the single market.
Well, this comes as there's, of course, been that shock result in France's elections overnight as the left-wing alliance defies the polls, beating Marine Le Pen's hard-right National Rally and Emmanuel Macron's centrist coalition too.
Yes, indeed. So let's get the latest from the continent with former member of the European Parliament, Dr. Charles Tannock. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with the Labour government. David Lammy doing his tour of Europe, 3 key countries there. Lots of talk of closer cooperation with the European Union. Would that come with strings attached?
Well, obviously, the Labour Party in their manifesto, and Keir Starmer has repeatedly stated this, are not going to rejoin the single market or the customs union. I think that's regrettable. I'd be the first to support such a move, but that's not going to happen in this Parliament. But nevertheless, short of that, David Lammy has hit the ground running by his trips to Germany, Sweden and Poland. He's very keen on having very good bilateral relations with these governments because they're also NATO member states. Don't forget, Sweden joined NATO because of Russian aggression. And of course, on the 18th of July, the new British government in Blenheim is going to host the European Political Community meeting, when all these countries will be coming to the United Kingdom to meet the new government and to talk about EU, European-wide issues, including Britain and those who aren't part of the European Union. And Joseph Borrell has invited the British government to attend the foreign ministers' meeting in October. So that will be a first for David Lammy to be a guest at the EU foreign ministers meeting. So I think this is a genuine reset, a genuine attempt to get closer to the EU 27. Don't forget, David Lammy was always a strong, passionate Remainer. I think in his heart, he's still a strong pro-European, but he's obviously accepted. He's been elected to a government which have excluded rejoining the European Union and even the single market or customs union. But short of that, the number one priority for this government is a defence and security treaty with the EU. Don't forget that in November, US elections, if Trump becomes president, and NATO is undermined, Britain will be very exposed in terms of defence and security as a NATO member. And of course, it's in our interests, particularly with the Russian aggression against Ukraine, to have very strong ties militarily and in terms of security with our European partners.
Yes, it looks like while the UK will stay out of those sort of central EU institutions, we might well join up to new ones or become very, very close to those existing institutions. After all, the current Brexit trade and cooperation agreement is scheduled to be renegotiated or at least reassessed within the next 2 years. Do you think that there's a chance they'll sort of revive this old Theresa May idea of a Chequers-style deal, as it was known at the time, where the UK sort of agrees to have a similar regulatory outlook to the EU, although not exactly the same, but sort of follows and shadows those regulations while not technically being inside the single market?
Well, I mean, I would obviously hope so, because there's no doubt that Brexit has been an economic disaster and hit about taking 4% of our GDP. And leaving the single market, I think, was a terrible mistake.
That 4% figure is a projection that still has not yet come to pass in reality.
Let's not argue about the figures, but nobody, even the most ardent Brexiteers, claim that the British economy has benefited from Brexit.
Well, we've grown quicker than other European nations, have we not?
Well, that depends on where you draw your baseline from. But there's no question that the UK economy, in my view, would have grown even more had it remained in the single market. So I don't think we want to relitigate the whole EU single market issue. The question that you've asked me to comment on is this new Labour government with a stunning majority going to try and have closer relations with the European Union? My view is it will. I believe this is a very genuine attempt by David Lammy, much more so than Rishi Sunak's government, Lord Cameron or James Cleverly. They kind of went to Europe, but clearly they were perceived as hostile to the project. David Lammy is perceived as friendly to the project, and I think that's very, very helpful. And there are lots of areas where the UK can cooperate. And I always advocated, in fact, in 2017, I wrote a paper on this, some kind of very strong defence and security arrangements, because Britain, along with France, remains the major military power.
You made an assumption. Sorry to interrupt. You made an assumption earlier that NATO would be undermined if if Donald Trump gets back into power over in the United States, and therefore we need more cooperation with Europe on defence and security. I mean, what's that assumption based on? It appears that Donald Trump just wants people to cough up more cash.
Listen, Donald Trump, we all know, is highly unpredictable, but which is not great in security and defence terms. So I don't know for sure he's going to do anything on NATO. All I can say is that in the past he has alluded to the fact that if countries, for instance, don't spend their 2%, which is the target, that the US won't come to their defence. So that alone should cause shivers down the backs of those who fear an invasion by Russia under Putin. So it is an assumption, but we can't afford to take any risks when it comes to defense of the realm and security cooperation. So I would strongly support moves to get closer to the European Union and its structures in the areas of defense and security. And I even advocated that the United Kingdom be given observer status at the Political and Security Committee of the EU back in 2016 in my paper.
Let's watch this space. Charles Tannock, former MEP. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but thank you so much for joining us and talking through that huge issue.
Also, we led the way when it came to Ukraine. Anyway, we're crossing live to Dover very shortly, where the first boat of migrants under a Labour government has now arrived. How will Labour deal with this growing issue? That's after your headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 1:30. The top story from the newsroom this afternoon. Downing Street has admitted that this summer will be challenging for the new Labour government as the first boat of migrants since the general election has crossed the English Channel today. The group of 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by a Border Force vessel and taken to a migrant processing centre in Dover Harbour. It brings the total number of migrants crossing so far this year to now 13,500 people. That's up 12% on the same time last year. Those latest small boat arrivals today come as the former Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair, is urging the new government to bring in digital ID cards to control immigration. However, the Home Secretary says it's not part of Labour's policy. Instead, Yvette Cooper insists setting up a new border security command will bring an end to people smuggling across the English Channel. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer's announced the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. Meanwhile, the Chancellor has announced the new Labour government is ripping up planning rules to build more homes, claiming she's prepared for short-term political pain to get Britain building again. In her first major speech, Rachel Reeves said she's ordered officials in the Treasury to produce an assessment of the financial mess left by the Conservatives. She's also argued that 14 years of Conservative rule has cost, she claims, £140 billion in lost growth. In Ukraine, the President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to retaliate after a Russian missile strike has killed at least 29 people, that figure still appearing to climb, and has left a children's hospital in ruins in the capital. If you're watching on television, you can see there the scenes of rescue efforts at the site of that missile strike in the capital, Kyiv, where that children's hospital has been struck. The president also saying in the last hour or so he does believe there are still survivors to be found under the rubble. It comes as Russia launched its biggest barrage of missiles across Ukraine for several months. Meanwhile, world leaders are preparing to head to a NATO summit tomorrow, where Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to call on Kyiv's allies to give a firm response to today's attack. And in France, voters are now facing an uncertain future after parliamentary elections there, but there won't be a right-wing government. Marine Le Pen's national rally came third, despite expectations it would top the poll. Protesters overnight clashed with riot police in Paris after those results were announced, leading to a likely hung parliament. The left-wing New Popular Front coalition is predicted to win, with President Macron's centrist group in second place. And finally, Boeing has agreed to pay a £190 million fine to authorities in the US to avoid a criminal trial over 2 crashes of its 737 MAX jetliners. The plane makers pleaded guilty to a fraud charge following the deaths of 346 passengers and crew in 2018 and 2019. But families of the victims have criticised that decision, saying it allows Boeing to avoid full responsibility. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More for you at 3 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. Today we'll bring some showers across northern parts, but further south it's going to be cloudier and there'll be some persistent rain pushing its way in. That's because there's an area of low pressure and associated fronts gradually making their way northwards. So a pretty cloudy day across many southern parts. Outbreaks of rain at times becoming more persistent later on. Like I said, across northern areas, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England, some sunny breaks, but also a scattering of showers. And then in between, across some central northern parts of England and perhaps North Wales, some decent dry and at times sunny weather. And here we're going to get the highest temperatures, just about getting into the low 20s. But where it's cloudy and wet, it is going to feel pretty cool for the time of year. Some heavy persistent rain then going to push its way in initially across parts of the southwest as we go through this evening. Could cause some problems on the roads during the evening rush hour, and we're likely to see some high totals building up as well. Turning cloudier as we go into the night across central parts, but further north through this evening, some late sunshine to look forward to, but still a scattering of showers around. Some of them perhaps could be a little bit on the heavy side. Overnight, that rain in the southwest is going to spill its way across many parts of England and Wales, but it will be in the southwest where we see the highest totals. Could be 30 millimetres in just 6 hours, perhaps 60 to 70 millimetres in 24 hours over the high ground such as Dartmoor. So a wet story across the southern half of the UK as we head towards dawn tomorrow morning. Clearer skies though further north across parts of Scotland. We're likely to dip into single figures. Elsewhere, a mild start but a wet start for many parts of England and Wales. That rain then continues to gradually make its way northward, so it will push into southern parts of Scotland and eastern parts of Northern Ireland as we go through tomorrow, clinging on to some dry, sunny weather towards the far northwest of the UK. And further south, it's going to turn a little bit drier, but still some outbreaks of rain, quite a bit of cloud, and still a relatively cool feel for the time of year. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. The Highlands of Scotland, the A86 is shut between Station Road and Newton Moor and the A889 in Balgowan. There's been a collision that's causing delays. Southbound M9 in Stirling, junction 9 to 8. That's Bannockburn down towards the Hull of Kinnaird. It currently down to one lane for investigation work. Now the northbound M1 struggling in a few spots. Firstly, a lane shut at Nottingham junction 25, queuing back to junction 24. There's a vehicle fire. Also, the northbound M1 is closed at the moment at junction 10. That's the turn off the Luton Airport Spur Road. Long delays back to Hemel Hempstead at junction 8 for a collision there. And there's been a collision to northbound for the M3. It's cleared, but still slow. It's queuing. It's in the roadworks, Camberley at 4 up to Lightwater junction 3. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 14 minutes past 2 now, and Martin is up next. Martin Daubney, what's coming up on your show today, then?
Good afternoon, guys. Well, a new dawn, a new government, a new Prime Minister, a new cabinet, and the same old problems still. The boats come rolling into Dover despite a fancy new plan by Yvette Cooper. Will Sir Keir Starmer just be yet another King Canute who cannot stop the tide like Rishi Sunak before him? Think it's bad here? Look at France. Their version of Jeremy Corbyn got voted in last night. 200 billion euros worth of early retirement plans could bankrupt the nation during the Olympics, expecting civil unrest. It's even worse over the channel. We're letting prisoners out early, so are the streets going to get less and less safe? And as you guys know, I've always been a huge supporter of Gareth Southgate. So it was excellent to see England vanquish their penalty demons against the Swiss. And now we must face Netherlands. Is it time to drop Harry Kane? He looks exhausted. That's all coming up. 3 till 6.
You're rewriting history like a politician, Martin.
No, Martin's always stuck by Gareth Southgate. I believe every word that this man says. Martin, I've never doubted you for a second. You've stuck by our boys through and through. Great to hear from you. Look forward to seeing your show at 3 o'clock.
He'll be back slagging them off if they don't do well on Wednesday.
Oh, it's like every fan. Every true fan has their moments of of doubt and their moments.
Glory and disdain. But yes, as Martin was saying, a small boat carrying 64 illegal migrants has arrived in Dover Harbour. This is the first small boat migrants to cross the English Channel under the new Labour government.
Well, let's go straight to Dover and our Home and Security editor, Mark White. And Mark, this is quite a moment and perhaps a symbol that as the government changes, the boats do not.
Yes, you're right. It's certainly worth marking that the first Channel migrants since the new government came into office have now arrived here, despite the avowed aim of Sir Keir Starmer and his government to smash the people smuggling gangs. Now, only the most unreasonable of people, I think, would expect that the small boats are going to stop immediately that a Labour government takes over. But in the weeks and months ahead, his government will be judged on just what they're doing and how effective their policy is at stopping the small boats. And remember, of course, we're getting right into the heart of summer now, where it will be flat calm more often than not in the middle of the Channel. And like today, where the weather has given way after about a week or so of bad weather that prevented boats from crossing. It's just a bit calmer today, and that's why we've seen one boat cross so far. There's possibility that more boats might cross as the day progresses. Then we're back into some bad weather again, but on the whole, the trajectory is towards better weather. That will mean more boats coming across, and inevitably, because we saw it with the Conservative government, that will pile the pressure on this new government in terms of what it's doing to stop the people smugglers and the boats entering the Channel.
Mark, we know that the new government wants to smash the gangs, smash the criminal gangs, but what about deportations?
Well, deportations is, I think, a key issue, because one of the outcomes really from deciding to ditch the Rwanda policy, which of course the new Prime Minister said at the weekend was now dead and buried, it means that there is not this safe third country to bring forward a policy of being able to move those illegal immigrants and asylum seekers from the country who you can't send back to the many countries, frankly, that it's too unsafe to send back to. On the small boats, for instance, most of those arriving are from countries such as Iran and Iraq and Syria, where you would never be able to send these people back to. So when you don't have that third safe country option, then there's a dilemma. What do you do with these people? Does it reach the point where effectively they're going to have to be given leave to remain here in the UK? In other words, it's effectively an amnesty, isn't it?
Real big questions there. But I suppose the Labour Party will be saying, well, an amnesty is better than putting people in hotels. Do you think that will go down well?
Well, there are lots of people who would be very against any talk of an amnesty, because they see it as actually a policy that if that were to happen, it would just encourage more people to come, knowing that if they come, they'll get to stay. The other argument, the counter-argument that you alluded to there, is that we are paying £8 million a day just to house 50,000 asylum seekers in hotels. There's much more than that with the asylum seekers who are in other locations. And as long as they're in the asylum system, they're not working, and while they're not working, the state has to pay for them. So the argument, of course, is you take them out of the asylum system, you make them productive members of society, and they're paying taxes. So there's certainly an argument to be had for amnesty, but there is a very big case, and Labour say they absolutely agree with this, that if you grant an amnesty, you are then encouraging more people to come across, making that illegal and unsafe journey.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mark White, there in Dover, for us to, well, not welcome in, but to observe the first boat under the new Labour government.
Sign of more to come, perhaps, but don't go anywhere, because we're going to be back after the break in Dortmund, ahead of that eye-watering clash of the Titans on Wednesday night, as England face those other inventors of capitalism, the Netherlands, in the Euros semi-final.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
How deep is the rift between Prince William and Prince Harry? Well, it's been reported that Prince William is refusing to speak to Prince Harry and has even taken on the role of disciplinarian, which was once, of course, the job of Prince Philip. But has that job gone now to William? And does he indeed rule with a rod of iron? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the former BBC Royal correspondent Michael Cole. Himself has a lot of iron. Do you think this is a fair approximation of the character? After all, Michael Cole, surely the palace could do with a firm leader at the moment. Is Wills the man?
I think he is, Martin, and good afternoon to you. William, 42 last Friday. He's grown into the role of heir apparent. He looks good, he sounds good. Now, when the late Queen was alive, she was the chairman of the board, but the chief executive was definitely Prince Philip. She was the head of state, but he was the head of the family. He chaired the Way Ahead Committee. He liaised with the security services. And he laid down the law for a long, long time. Of course, Duchess of York, Sarah, Fergie, was banished. And he also used to go through the invitation lists for any royal event, striking off people he didn't want there. So he was very much in charge. And I think the situation with William is that when he makes up his mind is made up. And he's doing extraordinarily well. And he's doing it without the daily support in public of his wife, of course. And we all wish Kate, the Princess of Wales, well and a speedy continued recovery. And I think the King will be welcoming his older son taking this more prominent role because, quite frankly, he can't do everything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Right, 2:50 is the time. Good afternoon, Britain. Now, if you've been watching the football, you might not have expected this, but after some dismal displays in the group stages, England are very much through to the semi-final of the Euros.
Yes, a showdown on Wednesday with the Netherlands is Gareth Southgate's next big challenge. Well, the excitement is building, and joining the fans in Germany ahead of that game is our very own Jack Carson, live in Dortmund. And Jack, this is a big, big moment for England. Do you think we have what it takes?
Well, we've not looked like we've had what it takes to get to the semi-final, really, based on the performances. But somehow England have just been able to do it. I said earlier and yesterday, it feels like we've been studying Harry Houdini because we've become like the great escape artists of this tournament, because every time it looks like we've not been good enough, like we might be going out. We've had an overhead kick from Jude Bellingham to equalise and send it to extra time. We had Bukayo Saka stepping up as that individual to send it to extra time. And, of course, eventually those penalty shootouts and Jordan Pickford saving one of Switzerland's penalties in the quarter-finals to send us to the semi-finals, which are going to be here in Dortmund on Wednesday. So it feels like we're just managing to get by. But Gareth Southgate called it, didn't he? England's best performance so far of the tournament, mainly because of the resilience that he says his side showed. Now, we've got a big poster here in the kind of main square. It's called the Hansaplatz of here in Dortmund. It says the future of yours, you've got this. Now, that was obviously got a big Germany player on the front. Now, they didn't really have it for this tournament, but maybe England can. And certainly here in Germany, in Dortmund, there are going to be thousands, tens of thousands of fans from England and from the Netherlands coming here. And this place is going to be a swarm of England fans and Dutch fans. 35,000 England fans are expected to be travelling to Dortmund over the next 24 hours. 75,000 Dutch fans are expecting to travel here because, of course, it's about only an hour away from the border here, the Netherlands. So, they're going to be coming in their thousands. Each side have only been given 8,000 tickets each for the game. So a lot of fans are going to be spread throughout this city trying to watch the game in the fan zones that are around this city as well. But there are some England fans that are already here. We spoke to one of them earlier. He's called Todd. Here's what he told us.
About time that the boys finally clicked for him, rather than playing so negatively. Everyone blames the manager, but it's a bit to do with them as well, They need to step up. It's a big occasion. And, yeah, it's going to be the one. We're finally going to get fire in. Expect goals.
Oh, it's good to see that we've got some Brits over there, but my goodness me, we're going to be so outnumbered in that stadium. There are going to be thousands upon thousands more Dutch supporters and fans than there are Brits. Is that going to put us at a disadvantage?
Well, you always back the underdog as well, though, don't you, Tom? And maybe England, with being outnumbered by the fans, maybe gives them that little bit of an edge, that little bit of a bite. Now, of course, the Signal Iduna Park, the yellow wall is one of the most famous parts of that stadium because of how intimidating it is. It's a huge wall of 25,000 fans stood behind one of the goal ends, and UEFA have given that end to the Dutch fans. So that is going to be some intimidation from them. But, of course, the England fans have been here before. England have been here before. Can we reach our second European Championship major final in a row? I think maybe we might be able to.
Our fans always punch beyond their weight, don't they? Thank you very much indeed, Jack Carson.
Yeah,
we do. Yeah. We make a lot of noise.
Yeah, we do.
Best chance.
Metaphorical punches rather than literal punches.
Yes, no literal punches, thank you.
What we would advocate.
Just one or two arrests.
Just one or two.
And we'll be back tomorrow, 12 till 3. But up next, it is, of course, Mr. Martin Domney bringing you all the very latest up until 6 o'clock. Stay with us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. It is going to turn pretty wet for many of us as we go through the rest of today, overnight and into tomorrow, because there is a system that is pushing its way northwards, and this is going to bring a lot of cloud and some heavy persistent rain, especially across parts of the southwest as we go through this evening and overnight, with a warning out because we are likely to see some disruption. Some flooding's possible, as well as some difficult driving conditions too. That rain will spread across much of England and Wales as we go through the night, so a wet picture for many of us. It does mean temperatures are generally going to hold up, so a mild start to the day for many. Though further north across parts of Scotland in particular, here there will be clear skies overnight, so it could be a bit fresh first thing. However, once the sun comes up, we will see our temperatures lifting a little bit, although they are likely to stay a bit below average for the time of year generally. But a mostly fine picture through the morning across much of Scotland. Rain starting to push its way in across parts of Northern Ireland and spreading across much of the northern half of England and Wales too. Further south, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared through by around 8-9 o'clock in the morning, but it is going to stay pretty cloudy for many, and there will be further outbreaks of rain, these continuing as we go through the day, and there could still be some heavy ones. The more persistent rain, though, will be spilling its way across parts of northern England into Northern Ireland and into southern Scotland, across the far northwest of Scotland, clinging on to some drier weather for a time. Like I said, though, temperatures a little disappointing for the time of year. We may just about scrape into the low 20s where we get any drier or possibly brighter breaks. That rain in the north continues to edge a bit further northwards, the far northwest of Scotland, clinging on to some fine weather through the evening. Elsewhere, quite a bit of cloud, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around. Some very wet weather to come across northern parts on Wednesday. Otherwise, there is a drying trend as we go through this week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.